Hey guys, welcome to Pocket Saga. So in today's video we are gonna see, what if Ash went to Crown Tundra with Chloe and Go, Part 2. This story is the return of the Regi Master by author Pika Blue 182. Before starting, if you are interested in Pokemon fanfictions, you can consider subscribing this channel and like this video, that will help a lot. Now let's dive in. Ash was suddenly awakened by the bright sun illuminating the room through the window alongside a sound he did not recognize. He scratched his eyes in an attempt to fully regain his vision, and for some strange reason, he felt as if he was being watched. Once his eyesight was no longer blurry, he stood up from the bed and staggered back in surprise as he was immediately greeted by Chloe. The girl, staring at him in an unamused fashion, leaned on the wall opposite to him, and Pikachu, also staring at him in a similar manner. The Vermilion City girl didn't say anything, which originally confused Ash, but when he noticed the time indicated by the clock situated next to her, he practically jumped out of bed and went to the bathroom to get ready. A few moments later, Ash came out in his traveling gear, with his bandage now removed from his right arm, now having completely healed from yesterday's injury, and awkwardly leaned on the doorframe. Gee, good morning, Chloe, he said. The girl let out a light chuckle and, still without saying a word, came up to him, adjusted a bit of his untamed hair, and left the room. Ash, slightly bewildered, looked at Pikachu for explanation, but his Pokemon seemed equally surprised by the girl's action. Ash checked the clock one last time before darting out of the room, with his favorite electric type in tow. The hyperclass trainer caught up to the girl right before she reached a surprisingly huge dining room, where Ash quickly spotted Brandon and Go already eating their breakfast, and Chloe went to go join them. The Pallet Town first swiftly went and got a tray of food before sitting down at the table, where Go was the first one to speak up. Ever heard of an alarm, Ash? Ash awkwardly laughed at Go's words and replied, Well, at least I am not late this time. You would have been if Chloe didn't wake you up, Brandon suddenly said. Ash took it as a sign to stop talking, so he calmly started to eat his breakfast without uttering another word. Anyways, started off Chloe, Brandon. You mentioned yesterday the temple we were looking for is at the 3-point pass, right? The man being questioned nodded silently. Do you know how we are going to get there? Indeed, the Pyramid King pulled out a map from his pockets and placed it on the table for everyone to see. First, we make our way past Freezington through the Frostpoint field where we'll reach the Giant's Bed. Then I planned on taking a detour to Ballamore Lake to visit the famous Dinah Tree, as there is something I want to look into there. After that we simply pass through a cavern nearby to make it to the Frigid Sea, where we then take a little path through the ocean to reach the 3-point pass. Simple. The man explained as if it was the easiest thing ever. The three young trainers looked at each other with concern before Ash spoke up. I think we'll just follow wherever you go, Brandon, he said sheepishly, earning a laugh from the rest of the group. Make sure you don't forget anything before we leave. This Pokemon Center is the only rest stop in the entire tundra, so there's no turning back anymore, no matter what we face. Yeah, you're not helping us feel any more confident about this whole expedition, Go said in a quiet voice. Ash put his now fully healed arm around Go pretty aggressively and proclaimed, We'll be fine, Go. Nothing to worry about. Says the person who almost fell off a cliff yesterday, the Vermilion City researcher muttered, quietly enough for only himself to hear. All right, let's get going, everyone, Brandon ordered as he stood up from his chair and started leaving the dining hall. Go and Chloe followed behind, with Ash and Pikachu taking a final bite of their food before doing the same. Wow, it's actually pretty hot today, commented Go to the rest of the group as he took his first steps outside and unzipped his coat slightly. There was no snow falling like there was yesterday, and the sky was completely clear, making the sunshine reflect on some of the snow and ice on the ground beautifully, with only the shadows of some trees diminishing the brightness. Ash quickly took the lead and exclaimed, All right, first up, Frostpoint Field. He looked around for a bit before turning around to face the group again. So, where is that exactly? The rest of the group's sweat dropped at the young boy's cluelessness when they were suddenly interrupted by the sound of a girl shouting at someone. The group of four turned to where the sounds came from and noticed a blonde and pink-haired girl, probably around Ash, Chloe and Go's age, arguing with someone who presumably was their father next to a small wooden house on a very small hilltop further in the village. Come on, Dad. Lay off and quit following me already. The young girl screamed loudly enough for the whole of Freezington to hear. Come on, Nia, Be reasonable. Don't you want to do some quality adventuring with the coolest dad ever? A gray-haired man looking to be Brandon's age replied desperately. I'll pass thanks, retorted the girl coldly. She then started to hurriedly make her way down the slight slope and seemed to be looking for anyone else apart from her father. She eventually noticed the 4 travelers and ran up to the first one in front of the group. Excuse me. My dad is stubborn as steel and he won't leave me alone. Back me up, Will. The girl temporarily paused mid-sentence and took a good look at the person she was addressing, and her jaw dropped. Oh my Arceus. Are you Ash Ketchum? Ash, not really knowing how to react to that, answered awkwardly, yeah. The girl in front of him suddenly took Ash's hands abruptly, causing him to yelp in surprise and stumble forward slightly, and extremely excitedly said, No way, I'm like your biggest fan ever. I can't believe I'm actually meeting you. Huh? Chloe suddenly stepped in between the two and turned towards the Pallet Town trainer. Alright Ash, we're going to need some explanations. Do you know this girl? She said quite firmly. Ash was going to say something but was interrupted by the blonde-haired girl. Oh, I forgot to introduce myself. I'm Peonia. It's an honor to meet you all. It is? Ash asked innocently, clearly confused with the current situation. At that moment, the gray-haired man Peonia was shouting at just a moment ago caught up to her. Why do you keep running away, Nia? The man looked at the confused faces of the people he didn't recognize and addressed Peonia. Are these your friends, Nia? You have got to be kidding me, right? Peonia said dumbfoundedly, and then pointed to Ash. You seriously don't recognize the champion of Alola? The what now? Asked simultaneously Go and Chloe. Brandon frowned at Go and Chloe's reactions and suddenly came up behind Ash and said, Don't tell me you haven't told them? Making the hyperclass trainer flinch. Alright everybody calm down. Ash screamed as he threw his hands out frantically. The Pallet Town native took a deep breath before commencing. Let's start by introducing ourselves properly. What's your name, sir? He said politely. The name's Peony. Nice to meet ya. Nice to meet you. I'm Ash from Pallet Town, and right here is my buddy Pikachu. He said while petting the Pokemon on his shoulders. He then pointed beside him and introduced his friends. These are my friends Brandon, Go and Chloe. Pleasure to meet you, said the three, with Peony replying with a simple smile and wave. Wait, so you two didn't know Ash was the Alolan champion? Asked a surprised Peonia to Go and Chloe, who replied with slow negative nods. Before Go and Chloe even said anything, Ash immediately started explaining. You see, basically, when I was on my journey through the Alola region, they had just created the first Pokemon League in the region, and I ended up winning the tournament. That's really all there is to it. That's one weird way of saying you're the strongest trainer in the entirety of the Alola region, muttered Go. Peony then suddenly chimed in with a strange comment. Oh, so you're the trainer that Nia can't stop talking about. Dad! Shouted a now blushing Peonia. Chloe noticed this and narrowed her eyes suspiciously, but didn't say anything. Anyways. What are you guys doing here in the Crown Tundra? Asked the blonde-haired girl, recomposing herself. We are going to check out some ruins at the 3-Point Pass. Apparently there has been mysterious readings coming from there, explained Ash. So you could say it's an adventure? Said Peony with a huge smile on his face. If you meant adventure, then yeah, I guess, responded the Pikachu trainer, a bit confused. Well then, would it be too much of an inconvenience for you guys to bring Nia along? Peony's response confused just about everyone, including Peonia herself, as she wasn't expecting such a suggestion. I know we just met, but since she doesn't want to go on an adventure with her old man just yet, maybe her going with you guys will help her learn just how much adventuring can be. And I'm sure Nia over here would love to travel with you, right? I mean, if it's not too much of a bother for you guys, of course, added shyly Peonia. Ash turned to his current companions and asked, Well, what do you think, guys? I don't mind, the more the merrier, first said Go, his cheerful attitude annoying Chloe slightly, as she wasn't particularly keen on having the blonde-haired girl join the group. I don't know, it risks being dangerous. Can she battle? Asked the Pyramid King. Brandon's smart thinking gave Chloe hope that he wasn't going to accept another member joining the group who couldn't defend themselves, but after Brandon's sentence, Peonia grinned and pulled out a Pokeball. It revealed a Tyrantrum, who upon landing on the ground, made a deafening screech that scared off nearby Pokemon in a second. I can take care of myself, she proudly declared. That was enough to convince Brandon, who upon seeing the clearly well-trained Tyrantrum, nodded in acceptance. Ash, Go and Brandon all looked at Chloe expectantly, and after a while, she reluctantly agreed. Fine, she sighed, frustrated. Well, I guess you're one of us now, Peonia, Ash exclaimed. Really, I can come. After the Pallet Town nodded as a final sign of confirmation, a huge smile came to her face and she tackled Ash into a bear hug as she profusely started thanking him. Thank you, thank you, thank you. C can't be breathe. Oh, sorry Ash, apologized Peonia, letting go of him. Ash simply gave her a smile and said it was all right. Chloe clenched both her fists angrily at the scene, something which didn't go unnoticed by Go. He hummed quietly while tilting his head. Ash. Look at this. It's a snowrunt. Huh? Ash quickly left his current discussion with Brandon and made his way excitedly to Peonia, who was crouching down, pointing at the miniature snow type, the Pokemon just looking at them idly. Oh, it is, Ash said, then proceeded to pet the creature, who seemed to enjoy the gesture. You have a Glalie, right? Did you catch it as a snowrunt? The blonde-haired girl asked enthusiastically. Ash scratched the back of his head. Yeah, I did. How did you know I had a Glalie? He asked back, intrigued. Well, she shifted her legs nervously as she spoke. You used it in the Hoenn League. You watched that? He exclaimed, surprised, to which the girl slightly nodded. Well then you probably also saw how I lost the league to a Meowth hee. I thought you did great though, that Meowth was clearly well trained, and Pikachu almost knocked it out too. At Peonia's words, Pikachu, currently on Ash's shoulder, seemed to be experiencing flashbacks of the events and shivered nervously at the memories of Tyson's Meowth. This made Ash and Peonia laugh, as the Pokemon clearly wasn't very happy with how it battled back then. Geez, just how much does she know about Ash anyways? Chloe sighed angrily, watching the two interact from a distance. It hadn't even been that long since the group had left Freezington and Peonia was already getting on Chloe's nerves. They were currently walking through Frostpoint Field and ever since they had left, Peonia stopped constantly at the sight of any Pokemon, and kept asking Ash a bunch of questions, to which the hyperclass trainer happily answered every time, which for some reason, really annoyed her. Alright you two, let's keep moving, we can't stop every time one of you sees a wild Pokemon, Brandon said, wanting to focus on their mission ahead. Sorry, apologized synchronously the two distracted trainers. It was enough having just Ash here, but now it's almost as if we have a second Ash haha, joked the Pyramid King, causing Ash, Go and Peonia to laugh out loud, whilst Chloe held her head, irritated. Hey, I think I can see the giant's bed in the distance, suddenly exclaimed Go, pointing at a huge grassy plain further ahead. Alright, let's go, suddenly exclaimed Peonia as she quickly ran off in the direction Go was pointing. Wait, Peonia tried to warn Ash, as she was about to trip on a small rock on the floor. The girl didn't notice this and eventually toppled on the small object. She was about to hit the ground but Ash caught her just before that. You should really pay more attention to where you are going, don't want to get her hurt now don't we? Brandon and Go looked at each other knowingly at Ash's ironic words and Peonia recomposed herself. Why yeah you're probably right, thanks Ash, she said with a blush. Chloe growled in anger as the group kept moving towards their destination. Whilst they were making their way through to Giant's Bed, Ash and Peonia were still happily conversing just behind Brandon, this time about the beginning of Ash's journey, which didn't sit well with a certain maroon-haired girl currently walking at the back of the group with Go. Her childhood friend noticed her displeasure once again and this time asked about it. You feeling okay, Chloe? Huh? Oh yeah, I'm fine. Why'd you ask? The Vermilion City girl replied innocently. Well, you just seem agitated. I am not, she screamed, causing Go to laugh. If you say so, he said, still chuckling. You know, it's kind of weird Ash didn't tell us about being the Alolan champion. It feels like something he should have told us about a long time ago, he remarked, changing the subject. Yeah maybe, but I don't necessarily think Ash is the type to boast about those things, and considering that when he told us he acted like it was nothing, I don't believe he actually thinks of it as a big deal. I guess you're right, but still, the fact that Peonia instantly recognized Ash makes it seem like it is a big deal, and especially as his friends. I wonder why he has never told us. The two Vermilion City trainers looked down at the ground at the same time, thinking. The more the duo thought about it, the more questions came up. Do his other friends know he is a champion? Does Professor Cerise know he is a champion? Is it actually that big of a deal? Was he never planning on telling them? We should probably just ask him. He surely has a good reason, right? Go tried to reason. Why yeah, probably, responded Chloe with a slightly forced smile. 30 minutes went by, and after a fairly uneventful trip so far, the group had reached an old cemetery where they decided to take a little break. Brandon and Go were intrigued by the sight, so they decided to explore the abandoned graveyard. Ash took the opportunity to train his Pokemon, making Lucario and Sirfetch'd battle, and Chloe decided to relax next to a tree with her Eevee. Whilst the maroon-haired girl was idly petting her Eevee, Peonia suddenly sat on the fence in front of her and gave her a huge smile. Hey! Seeing Peonia smiling happy at her, Chloe took time to finally take a good look at her appearance. She was about the same height as herself and sported a plain white t-shirt covered with a blue jacket matching with a skirt of the same color and black leggings, making it almost seem like she was wearing some sort of school uniform. The blonde-haired girl also had some beige shoes and a light blue bandana on her head. She didn't seem very prepared to face the cold, so Chloe narrowed her eyes and commented on it. "Aren't you cold wearing just that?" she said, ironically, coldly. "Not really, I come here often so I get used to the temperature pretty fast," she responded cheerfully. A slightly awkward silence occurred and Peonia said, "You don't talk much, do you?" The girl's comment irritated Chloe. It's not that I don't talk much, I just don't feel the need to comment on every little thing I see," she defensively replied, not so subtly referring to Peonia. "Oh, I see. Though, it seems a little strange that you decide to travel with Ash and, from what I've seen, Go, since they seemingly act like that a little as well." Well, Go never really used to act like that before he met Ash, but since then it feels like I'm traveling with two kids constantly. Peonia giggled at her response and added, "I guess that's just what Ash Ketchum does to people." Chloe rolled her eyes and sighed angrily. "Great, here we go again with the Ash obsession." Peonia was going to continue but Chloe cut her off uncharacteristically. "What's your deal with Ash anyways? It seems like every time you want to say something, you always have to bring him up somehow." A longer silence took place as Peonia seemed a little surprised at her tone. After a little while, she looked at the ground embarrassingly. "Sorry, it's just that, I really admire him. I've been following his journey as a trainer for a long time now and finally meeting is really awesome. He is actually one of the reasons I became a trainer in the first place." "Huh?" said Chloe, surprised. Don't tell him that though." Peonia said, even more embarrassed before sighing. "It's just, I remember first seeing him battle in the Silver Conference and I felt captivated by his battle style. The way he just came up with a strategy on the fly was beyond impressive. I started watching all his league matches since then and in every battle, he found a way to be even better than in the last one. When he made it to the Kalos League final, that's when I finally decided to actually become a trainer. I had never seen a battle quite as intense as that one in my entire life, and that made me want to be like him. If he was the same age as me and could have a battle like that, then I could too. His level of passion and love for Pokemon is something that has truly inspired me my entire life. But not only that, even now, he always has a positive attitude and seems like he is enjoying every single little bit of his life at every moment. That attitude, not only as a trainer but as a person as well, is something I strive to achieve." Chloe was left stunned. She couldn't believe that the Ash she knew influenced people that much. Heck, by the way Peonia described him, she would have guessed he was a world-renowned celebrity, inspiring the lives of thousands of trainers. She glanced at Ash and saw him with a beaming smile, watching Lucario and Sirfetch'd battle each other with everything they had. The Vermilion City girl just couldn't associate the person Peonia was describing with the Ash she knew, and that thought frustrated her a lot. "I don't get it," Chloe started off, catching the blonde-haired girl's attention. "I know I haven't known Ash for that long, but it seems like we know two completely different people. I didn't even know he was a champion before this morning." "That still surprises me now, even if he never told you. His status as a champion is hard to not know." Chloe gritted her teeth at her words, and the girl continued. "Anyways, sorry if I talk about Ash a lot, he has just been a really big inspiration for me, and, I guess, well. Peonia started blushing again as she was speaking, and Chloe narrowed her eyes suspiciously again, until the blonde-haired girl suddenly found an excuse to leave. I'm going to check what Go and Brandon are doing. So yeah, see ya around, she said as she quickly left. Chloe frowned, closed her eyes and went back to petting her Evie without saying a word. Brandon, would it really have been that big of an inconvenience for you to help just a little? Go asked sarcastically. If you keep asking for help, you'll never be able to do anything by yourself, the man replied firmly. Yeah, I get that, but when I'm being chased by 3 dragapults, don't you think that's a bit much to handle alone? Life isn't always fair, kid. Go slapped his forehead at Brandon's words in disbelief. After deciding to explore the old cemetery together, Brandon and Go eventually found themselves face to face with a Dracloak. Go, excitedly wanting to catch the secondary evolutionary stage of the Galar pseudo-legendary Pokémon, engaged in a battle with the dragon type. After a well-fought battle, Go managed to catch it safely in a Pokeball, but soon after, 3 Dragapults appeared and seemed pretty angry at Go for catching one of their friends, and started attacking him. The Vermilion City researcher desperately tried to fend them off, and eventually, after a lot of difficulty and Go needing the help of all 5 of the Pokémon currently in his party, the group of Dragon-type Pokémon fled. Brandon simply stood there the whole time, observing the entire scene. Well, anyhow, you successfully managed to make them flee, and you caught a pretty powerful Pokémon at that, so you should be proud of yourself, kid. Laughed out the Pyramid King. Gee, thanks, he replied, looking at his new Dracloak's Pokeball. The 2 trainers then suddenly spotted Peonia running towards with a hand in the air. Hey guys. What happened to you, Go? You look like you just fought 3 strong Pokémon at the same time, she said, noticing the researcher looking all scratched and bruised. That's because I did, replied Go, deflated. Brandon let out another laugh. Well, we should go get Ash and Chloe and get a move on, we took enough of a break as it is. Speak for yourself, Go interrupted, as the group started making their way to the other 2 trainers. After a not-so-long walk, they first found Chloe with Pikachu in her arms, looking at something in the distance. Go addressed her first. Hey Chloe, we're going back on the road, where's Ash? Alright Lucario, you better watch out this time, ready Sir Fetched? Fetched. The group turned towards the sound and found Ash, using a branch as a sword and his cap as a shield, and Sir Fetched trying to attack Lucario, who wasn't using any moves, simply trying to dodge the pair's attacks using only its aura. He's trying to teach Lucario to trust his aura instincts to dodge attacks. Don't really know why he is pretending to be Sir Fetched with a branch and his cap though, Chloe explained. Picopy, agreed the electric type. Hey, Ash, screamed Go. Huh? Oh hey guys. The trainer waved from a distance. We're going to keep making our way to the 3-point pass, come on. Oh, okay. Lucario, Sir Fetched, take a rest now, Ash said as he returned his 2 Pokémon and went and joined the rest of the group, with Pikachu swiftly jumping out of Chloe's arms onto Ash's shoulder and placing his trainer's hat on his head. An hour passed by, with nothing particularly eventful happening. Brandon was still leading the pack, indicating where they had to go, with Peonia next to him, as he was explaining to her all the information they had so far about the temple they were looking for. Go was just behind them, taking pictures here and there of the wonderful snowy tundra, and finally Chloe and Ash were walking side by side at the back of the group of 5, lightly conversing about random subjects, but it was mostly focused on Chloe asking some much-needed questions to his recently revealed status. So, let me get this straight, you're still considered the champion of Alola, but you gave your champion duties to Professor Kukui because you decided to go back home and explore the world. Ash simply nodded. Seems pretty dumb to me, but not surprising considering it's you. Well, maybe it is a bit weird that I decided to do that, considering most people would have probably just settled with being a champion, but I felt like I still hadn't accomplished my dream of being a Pokemon master, so I think it was for the best, said the Pallet Town trainer, hands behind his head. Maybe once I become a Pokemon master I'll go back to Alola and take back my champion's duties. Considering you don't even know what a Pokemon master is, I highly doubt it, the Vermilion City girl said in her mind, before speaking again. I still can't wrap my head around the fact that you're basically famous, and you never even told us. Ash seemed disturbed at the mention of being famous but quickly recomposed himself. But I'm not famous, I'm just your typical Pokemon trainer, I'm really nothing special. As if, Chloe muttered. Huh? What was that? Oh, you nothing, she said a little flustered, which made Ash laugh. Anyways, I guess for me another thing I'm struggling to wrap my head around is how Peonia knows so much about me. Chloe's expression visibly changed at the mention of the blonde-haired girl, although it went unnoticed by Ash. Seems a little creepy if you ask me, Chloe said, arms crossed. At first, it seemed like that to me as well, but now I feel kind of grateful. The maroon-haired girl looked at him questioningly. I've had plenty of random people who've admired me before, saying things like my battling is really unpredictable and amazing, but that's only as a trainer. I was kind of scared Peonia was going to be like that too, but I feel like she appreciates me as a person as well, which is something I'm really thankful for. Chloe didn't recognize the expression on Ash's face. It was a mix of relief, happiness and gratefulness. It was clear the Pallet Town native meant what he said, but what Chloe found strange was how she didn't feel happy for him, and felt more jealous than anything. Oh, well that's great, she ended up saying, with no real emotion behind it. The conversation ended soon after, with only silence now taking place between the two of them for quite a long while. Eventually, the group finally arrived at Balamere Lake, where the Dyna tree could easily be spotted from miles away. Alright gang, we're here, the Frontier Brain exclaimed. They definitely don't make it hard to miss, Go commented, noting how huge the tree really was. Well, what are we waiting for? Let's go check it out, excitedly said Peonia, as she took off for the giant tree, followed by Go and Chloe. Ash stayed behind to talk to Brandon for a bit. So Brandon, why exactly did you want to come check out this huge tree? It's not really like you to take a detour for nothing, the hyperclass trainer first said. Brandon narrowed his eyes seriously before answering, which made Ash even more intrigued. As you might have guessed from the name, the Dyna tree radiates Dynamax energy. Recently, I've been told it's been expelling more energy than usual, and people think it's because there's a possibility of a wild Dynamax Pokemon nearby. Wait really? Ash exclaimed, surprised, to which Brandon nodded. Better be careful around here then, he finished more seriously. There have also been reports of a mysterious Pokemon wandering near here, and I think it may be connected to the extra energy being radiated from the tree. Added the Pyramid King. Keep a lookout for anything suspicious, alright? Gotcha. Ash affirmed as they went and joined the rest of their group. The three young trainers ahead of Ash and Brandon had set up a little spot to camp at, and Peonia suggested making some curry, to which the whole group quickly agreed. Alright then everyone, let's go find some berries first. There's plenty of berry trees around here. The blonde-haired girl practically ordered. Go went with Chloe, walking around and picking at random berry trees they found along the way. They ran into a little trouble when a few squavets appeared from a couple of the trees, but their Pokemon handled them just fine. Peonia stayed back and prepared the stove that she somehow had, and finally, Ash went with Brandon a little further from the Dyna tree to also search for some berries. The Pallet Town trainer let out an exhausted sigh. Man, all this walking sure has made me hungry, I'm glad I get to eat soon. I see your excessive appetite also hasn't changed, Ketchum, Brandon jokingly said, which made the both trainers chuckle. But don't forget to keep an eye on anything of note. Shouldn't we tell the others about this? It seems like something they should know. Being the champion of a region is also something Go and Chloe should have known, but you still didn't tell them, Brandon commented, which made Ash flinch. I already told Go some of the details, but I don't want to worry the other two for nothing. I see. Well, I guess that's FAI. Ash suddenly stopped talking as he saw a shadowy figure, seemingly looking at him in the distance, before dashing off. Why, you saw that, right? Brandon nodded. Looked like a Pokemon, but it was too far to tell what it was exactly. Do you think it's the mysterious Pokemon you were talking about? Too early to tell, it could have been a random Pokemon, best not to jump to conclusions. You're right, Ash finished as they went back to picking some berries. After a little while, the entire group was now back at their mini campsite close to the Dyna tree, with plenty of berries in hand. This should be enough for the 5 of us, Go affirmed. I guess yeah, but I feel like we're lacking a diversity of berries, Peonia mentioned. The girl looked around for a bit until she stopped and stared at the Dyna tree, where an idea visibly came to her. Surely the Dyna tree has some special berries. Why don't we just pick them from there? I'm not so sure that's a great idea, Peonia, the Pallet Town trainer first replied. The girl in question dismissed his words with a sway of her hand. It will be fine, Ash. I'm just going to pick a couple, she said as she started running towards the tree. Peonia tried to get one of the berries dangling from the bush, but it was too high up to reach, so she frustratingly started shaking the tree in order to make the berries fall. Tyrantrum, help me out, she called out her Pokemon, who helped her in rocking the tree. Unknowingly to Peonia, the constant shaking of the tree started making red energy particles flow out of the bushes more and more, which started to concern the rest of the group. I'm starting to get a bad feeling about this, Go said worriedly as more and more particles started coming out. Trust me, there's nothing to worry about, she stubbornly replied as she kept shaking the tree with even more force. Peonia, the bushes are letting out some weird particles, you should really stop right about now, Chloe shouted. Brandon seriously looked at Ash and gave him a sign telling him to get ready, and Ash relayed the message to Pikachu in a similar fashion. After a little more time, a Rosalie berry lightly fell off the tree, which Peonia caught. She looked back at the group and smiled. See? Nothing happened, she exclaimed, oblivious of what was happening behind her. How about you turn around before saying anything, Go said with a shaky voice, staring behind her. Peonia innocently turned around and noticed the red particles going back into the tree, followed by the slow appearance of a Dynamax Greedent falling from the giant bushes. After the Pokemon fully emerged, it landed on the ground, which made Peonia and her Tyrantrum jump and let out a deafening screech, causing the entire group to cover their ears. What in the world? The blonde-haired girl screamed. The Greedent didn't even give her time to breathe as the Dynamax Pokemon immediately started charging a Max Strike. Ash, looking in shock at the sudden appearance of a Dynamax Pokemon, suddenly had a train of thought. Wait, if there are Dynamax particles here, does that mean? The trainer quickly whispered something in Pikachu's ear, to which the Pokemon smirked, and quickly rummaged through his bag. Quick Tyrantrum, protect, Peonia ordered. Her Dragon-type quickly put up a shield as its trainer quickly ran back to the group. The Greedent fired off its attack at the nearby Tyrantrum, who blocked most of it, but still received some damage. What is a Dynamax Greedent doing in a tree of all places? Chloe exclaimed, finding it hard to believe a Pokemon like that was just hiding in the Dyna tree. Less questions, more fighting back, Brandon said firmly. Regirock, I need your assistance. Cinderace, let's go. Eevee. As everyone called upon their Pokemon, everybody looked at Ash expectantly, who for some reason, was standing there. Ash? They simultaneously asked. The trainer smirked, took his hat back from Pikachu, who jumped in front of his beloved trainer with a cry, and showed off his wrist, revealing a familiar black and white wristband with blue and red colors on the edge to the surprise of the entire group. If that Greedent can Dynamax because of those particles, so can we. Why, you have a Dynamax band? Peonia exclaimed, surprised, earning a confident nod from Ash. I'm surprised you don't know that as well, Chloe muttered to herself. Alright, Pikachu, let's get huge, Gigantamax, Pikapi. Without even the need to recall Pikachu to its Pokeball, Ash's Dynamax band started glowing and Pikachu started absorbing some of the red particles in the air, and consequently, grew more and more in size, until eventually, his Gigantamax form appeared in front of the group. His tail was now a really bright yellow color plus some red clouds were now above his head, and, most obviously, Pikachu was now a size comparable to the giant Greedent in front of them. Alright, now this is a fair battle. Let's show this Greedent what we got, everyone. Pikachu, Max Strike, eagerly ordered Ash, excited to get on the offensive using the battle mechanic he hasn't utilized very much. Pikachu, after some difficulty due to his size, jumped into the air. Once he landed, the whole ground started shaking, making it harder for the group to stay standing, and a crack was created that was slowly approaching the Dynamax Greedent. Once it arrived, a burst of yellow energy erupted from the ground, dealing visible damage to the Greedent. You do realize when Pikachu jumps he creates an earthquake that we can all feel, right? Chloe screamed in anger at Ash, regaining her balance after Pikachu's miniature earthquake. The boy chuckled sheepishly and said, Sorry, I'm not really used to using Gigantamax in an open field very much. At least a warning next time would be great, Ash, Go pleaded, stabilizing himself from the ground shaking. Cinderace, Blaze Kick. Dragon Claw Tyrantrum, added Peonia. The two Pokemon took off for their target, but just before they made contact with the giant squirrel, it quickly put up a light blue shield, blocking it from all damage. Max Guard, muttered Brandon. Alright everyone, let's surround it. Ash, you break the shield, then we strike with our own moves. Got it. Everybody else replied simultaneously. Brandon, go, Chloe and Peonia all went on different sides of the Greedent readying an attack. When Brandon saw everybody in position, he nodded to Ash who smirked and commanded to his Pokemon. Max Steel Spike. After another cry with an abnormally deep voice, Pikachu grabbed his bright yellow tail and slammed it into the ground with force, creating a series of jagged gray spikes that went on a crash course towards Greedent's shield. Upon contact, the shield broke and soon disintegrated into multiple pieces. The group took the opportunity to attack. Pyro Ball. Rock Slide. Hyper Beam. Ordered go, Peonia and Brandon accordingly. Chloe took a little more time deciding which attack to make Eevee use, but soon added, Hyper Beam you too Eevee. With multiple cries by all of their Pokemon, the attacks of Cinderace, Regirock, Tyrantrum and Eevee were launched, all of them successfully hitting the Dynamax Greedent. The giant Pokemon staggered back from the damage, but quickly shook it off. No good huh, Peonia commented. Greedents are naturally bulky Pokemon, add Dynamax on top of that and this might get a little complicated, Brandon added, noting that the Greedent barely really felt the attacks. Well, we can't really do much more than just constantly attack so, Go started off, before ordering his ace Pokemon once again. Double kick Cinderace. Lend me a hand Chloe. Eevee. You know what to do, Eevee! Exclaimed the normal type, as its tail glowed red and ran behind Cinderace preparing a double kick. They quickly started constantly barraging the Dynamax Greedent with their super effective moves, and since the mobility of the Pokemon was fairly limited due to its size, it could only stand and take them. Peonia and Brandon, not the type to just stand there and do nothing, started attacking with their own Pokemon, using Ancient Power and Stone Edge. After a little while of receiving constant damage, the Greedent finally made his move. The giant normal type's body started glowing yellow and creating some sparks of electricity, which made the group start to worry. What's it doing now? Questioned Chloe, not recognizing the move. Max Lightning, brace yourselves. Brandon warned a little too late, as a giant electric bolt was already on their way towards them. Fortunately for them though, Ash was ready. Quick Pikachu. G-Max Volt Crash. He exclaimed loudly. Pikachu quickly shot his own bolt of electricity into the air and, right before the Greedent's move reached the group, multiple electric bolts collided with the Max Lighting. The two moves stayed in a stalemate for a little while, until Pikachu's G-Max Volt Crash overpowered the Max Lightning, resulting in the Dynamax Greedent getting shocked with the powerful electric attack and damaging heavily the squirrel Pokemon. Alright. Thanks for the save Ash, Go said relieved, as Brandon, Peonia and Chloe also gave Ash a smile of thankfulness. Their moment of joy didn't last too long though, as Pikachu soon started shrinking back in size, as he quickly reverted to his original form, signifying he had used up 3 Dynamax moves. After the group witnessed Pikachu turn back to normal, they looked at the Greedent in hopes of it doing the same, since it had also used 3 max moves, but the Pokemon didn't change back. Isn't this the part where the Greedent turns back to normal? Chloe asked, confused as to why Pikachu had to revert back to his original form but not the squirrel Pokemon. Unfortunately, that's not how it works, Brandon started explaining. When wild Pokemon Dynamax on their own, they only revert back to normal when defeated, but Pokemon who Dynamax or Gigantamax through a Dynamax band only have the use of 3 max moves before reverting back to normal. Well, that's just great, and pretty unfair if you ask me, Peonia muttered ironically. Whilst the humans were distracted questioning the logistics of Dynamax phenomenon, the still Dynamaxed Greedent took the opportunity to prepare its next attack. Some giant neon green mushrooms started appearing from the ground, and they started absorbing some weird green energy. The group of adventurers didn't particularly know what exactly the move Max Overgrowth did, but they knew that it probably wasn't a very good thing for them. Tyrantrum. Protect, Peonia screamed, ordering another green shield from her Pokemon, covering the rest of the group. The green mushrooms from Max Overgrowth suddenly started shooting out some seeds directly at the shield, which surprisingly enough, stood strong, but with every hit it took, it seemed more likely to break. Ash, at the sudden sound of a voice ringing in his head, Ash frantically looked around, confused. He knew from previous experiences that what he just heard was someone speaking in his mind through telepathy. He noted that the others didn't seem to notice the sound, meaning whoever was talking was specifically talking to him only. Huh? Guys. I don't think Tyrantrum can hold for much longer, Peonia screamed once again, bringing Ash out of his thoughts. Regi started firing stone edges at the seemingly infinite number of giant seeds being thrown at them in an attempt to stop some of them, and Cinderace did the same with pyro balls, but it only worked partially. Ash, Pikachu, it's been a while, huh? Let's see if you two still got it. Ash once again looked around totally bewildered, with Pikachu now also having the exact same reaction as his trainer. They both felt as if they recognized the voice, but couldn't quite put a finger on who exactly it was. The Pallet Town trainer didn't know why, but he felt as if the mysterious voice was one of an ally, or somebody trying to help. Chloe noticed Ash and Pikachu's cluelessness and asked about it worriedly. Ash? The trainer didn't respond, and simply looked at Pikachu and nodded as a sign that they both unreasonably trusted the source of the voice. In front of them, Regirock, Cinderace and especially Tyrantrum were starting to get tired quickly, with the shield of Protect struggling to stay intact. Everybody started getting quite concerned by their current situation, but Ash and Pikachu stayed on their toes, prepared for when the mysterious voice in their head came to help them. It wasn't too long before another telepathic message came to them. Pikachu, you still know Iron Tail, right? Pikachu let out a loud affirmative cry, making everybody except Ash look at him questioningly. All right. When I say, you two jump to your left, I'm almost there, just hang on. Ash and Pikachu didn't even question the stupidity of that act, considering they still didn't know who was talking to them, and the pair got ready for when the mysterious voice came to their aid. A few more seconds passed and Peonia's eyes went wide-eyed at the sight of Tyrantrum's shield finally breaking, leaving them exposed to the final giant seed being shot out from Max Overgrowth. Fortunately though, at that exact same moment, the voice talking to Ash and Pikachu telepathically finally arrived at the scene. Now. Pikachu. Chloe, still staring at the pair with slight worry, felt as if time slowed down, as she saw both Ash and Pikachu suddenly throw themselves to their left. She was about to call out the trainer's name, wondering what on earth he was doing, but to the shock of just about everybody in the vicinity, a familiar beige horse caught them. She saw Ash and his partner quickly readjust themselves on the horse and the Pallet Town native immediately gave his orders to Pikachu. Iron Tail. In the blink of a second, Pikachu jumped from the horse and sliced the giant seed on a crash course for the group in two, making the two halves skim just next to either side of the travelers, one of which making Chloe fall back on the ground in surprise from just how close it came to running her over. The electric type then swiftly landed back onto the front of the horse, where Ash and Pikachu made the same realization. Keldeo, I knew I recognized that voice. Long time no see, Ash, said the still galloping Colt Pokemon, now speaking in everyone's minds, making everybody apart from the previously mentioned trainer and Pokemon jump at the sensation of experiencing telepathy for the first time. Is that the mythical Pokemon from Unova, Keldeo? A and D, did it just speak in my mind? Go said in total disbelief and confusion. It's using telepathy to communicate with us, and apparently that Keldeo knows Ash enough to want to help us, Brandon replied a little more calmly than Go. What are you doing here in the Crown Tundra, Keldeo? Ash asked eagerly, still riding on the back of the Colt Pokemon, who was already in its resolute form. I'll explain later, right now we should probably focus on not getting hit by that Max Overgrowth, Keldeo remarked, as the Dynamax Greedent prepared the exact same attack as before. Ash looked back from Keldeo's back and caught Chloe's shocked expression as she stared at him in disbelief. He gave her a smirk, which made the maroon-haired girl's heart start to beat a little faster, and the Pallet Town trainer addressed the entire group. Lend us a hand, guys. The following moments consisted of everybody ordering their Pokemon to deflect or intercept the incoming giant seeds from afar, as Keldeo dodged and swerved the neon green projectiles trying to get closer to the giant squirrel Pokemon, with Ash and Pikachu riding on the Pokemon's back, and the mouse Pokemon occasionally slicing one of the many projectiles sent by the Greedent. Everybody in the group who was helping Ash, Pikachu and Keldeo from afar were in different states of mind during these moments. Brandon, for one, attempted to figure out just how or why a Keldeo seemingly appeared out of nowhere, not being aware that the Colt Pokemon had warned Ash beforehand of its presence. Go tried to focus on what was happening in front of him, but found it quite difficult as many questions started to pop in his mind on what exactly was going on right now. Peonia, somehow one of the calmer people currently in this situation, fluently commanded attacks to her tyrantrum in an attempt to help Ash, who she found herself admiring more and more at the sight of him somehow expertly riding on the back of a wild Keldeo whilst ordering his Pikachu to slice anything in their way. Finally, Chloe just starred at what you may ask. A raven-haired figure, casually riding on the back of a well-renowned mythical Pokemon with a huge smile on his face. She didn't know if she was just seeing things, but to her, it was as if the Pallet Town trainer was shining, with everything else around him appearing as just a blurry image to Chloe. Nobody noticed her dazed state, as they were all occupied with their own thoughts. Thankfully for the group, Eevee didn't need instructions from her bewildered trainer and copied some moves on its own to help out the others. Chloe's mind stayed blank for a while, with the only thing she focused on was the seemingly shining raven-haired trainer riding on the back of a Keldeo. She was only partially brought back to her senses when that same Keldeo spoke in the group's minds once again, the girl flinching at the strange sensation. "Your new friends aren't half bad, Ash," Keldeo jokingly commented, as Cinderace and Regirock's moves collided with two seeds headed straight for the Colt Pokemon, exploding just before it reached it. The trainer laughed at Keldeo's strange compliment and the Pokemon added, "All right, time for the big finale. Better hold on tight, you two." "Wait, whoa. Pikachu." Ash and Pikachu suddenly screamed out as Keldeo suddenly ran forward with a lot more speed just as they were about to reach the Dynamax Greedent. The Colt Pokemon shot a single focus blast from its mouth, hitting the Squirrel Pokemon square on its stomach, making it stagger back from the super effective move. The horse in its resolute form then proceeded to effortlessly jump over the giant normal type, spin on itself whilst in midair and fired off hydro pumps from its hooves. Ash and Pikachu struggled to hold on, the hyperclass trainer basically embracing the Pokemon and the electric type holding on desperately to its trainer's cap. As the Dynamax Pokemon was still getting hit by the sprinkler of hydro pumps created by Keldeo, the resolute Pokemon landed behind the Greedent, and the water and fighting type's body started to glow a bright yellow. A giant yellow blade of energy was formed from Keldeo's horn, and after a mighty battle cry, it dashed at incredible speeds towards the Greedent and slashed its back, creating a huge explosion. Brandon, Go, Peonia and Chloe simply watched in awe, as after the smoke from the explosion cleared, the Greedent was revealed to have returned to its normal size and the normal type simply sat on the floor, oblivious to the monstrosity it was just a few seconds ago. Keldeo quickly made its way back to the group, and after dropping Ash and Pikachu on the floor, turned back into its ordinary form with a proud smile on its face. "Whoa," was all Go could utter at the end of the sequence of events. "I see you're still as reckless as ever, Keldeo," Ash said, slowly picking himself back up from the ground. "What can I say, Ash? As a member of the Swords of Justice, I'm pretty confident in my own abilities," the part water type replied arrogantly with a smirk. "I guess Keldeo was most likely the mysterious Pokemon from earlier," Brandon thought out loud. Brandon's comment made Ash quickly realize he hadn't properly introduced his friends to Keldeo, so he swiftly did so. "Oh right, Keldeo, these are my friends Brandon, Go, Chloe and Peonia. Guys, this is Keldeo. I met him a while back when I was traveling in Unova. Any friend of Ash is a friend of mine. Nice to meet you guys," Keldeo said telepathically. Brandon, Go and Chloe all made their salutations in their own way, although they were all equally surprised by the casual manner of the mythical Pokemon, especially after defeating a Dynamax Greedent as if it was nothing. Ash noticed Peonia hadn't said a word at all since Keldeo dropped him off and asked about it. "Peonia?" The girl was looking at the ground with her fists clenched, making it so that nobody could see her facial expression. "Ash," she slowly said in a harsh manner. The trainer in question got a bit scared by her tone, but that slight fear was quickly washed away when Peonia suddenly ran up to Ash, rapidly took his hands, and with now sparkling eyes, exclaimed, "That was awesome. I can't believe you just rode on the back of a Keldeo. And Pikachu Gigantamaxing earlier was so cool. You're just full of surprises." Calm down, Peonia. It really isn't such a big deal," Ash said, a bit uncomfortable and embarrassed. "It is. And the fact that you already know this Keldeo is mind-blowing. How do you even meet a Pokemon like that? The blonde-haired girl persisted eagerly, still holding his hands tightly, much to the annoyance of a certain someone. I'll be glad to explain. After eating some food, that Greedent dropped a lot of berries after it returned back to normal, so I'm sure we can make some curry now. Keldeo, you wanna join? Curry? Of course I'm in. I'm starving after battling that Greedent, the Colt Pokemon replied excitedly. Go noticed the mythical Pokemon has a similar reaction at the suggestion of food as a good friend of his, and that thought made him laugh out loud. Doesn't that remind you of someone? He asked Brandon. Why am I not surprised? The man sighed. A good while had passed since the group had battled the Dynamax Greedent alongside the mythical Pokemon Keldeo, and after finishing cooking with the extra berries they had collected, the group happily ate some delicious curry right next to the famous Dyna tree alongside said Pokemon. At the request of pretty much everyone, Ash happily and nostalgically explained the history he had with Keldeo, and how he got to meet him in Unova, with the Colt Pokemon adding to certain parts of the story to make it more dramatic, making Ash and Pikachu sweat drop at his exaggerated additions. Everybody was dazzled by the story told to them, and even Keldeo seemed particularly happy to reminisce on some old memories. And that's about it. That's how I first met Keldeo, Ash said, as he finished explaining the story. Wow, that's quite the story, Ash. If it was anybody else, I probably wouldn't even believe it, Go commented after sighing. I agree. It almost feels like you could make a whole movie out of that, Peonia added. If you don't mind me asking, how exactly did you end up here in the Crown Tundra, Keldeo? Brandon asked a bit too seriously, almost making it seem like he wanted to interview the Pokemon, although it didn't bother Keldeo at all. Well, Keldeo started off, pumping out its chest, after bravely defeating Kyurem and saying goodbye to Ash and his friends. Actually, you didn't defeat, the details aren't important, Ash. Keldeo bashfully interrupted Ash's correction, making the latter facepalm. Anyways, some time passed and not a lot was happening in Unova, so Cobalion suggested we should go to this snowy place called the Crown Tundra to train in harsher conditions. Oh, so the other Swords of Justice are also here? Brandon questioned further, intrigued. Keldeo nodded and added, yeah, they are. They're all training on their own in different places in the tundra, though even I don't really know where they're exactly. They told me to stick around this huge tree because of some strange occurrences here relating to the Dynamax phenomenon, and I'm glad I did. I never expected that a huge Greedent would just be hiding in a tree. Trust me, you're not the only one, Chloe quietly commented, still a little in disbelief at the fact. Well, in any case, I'm glad I got to meet you all. And it's really nice I got to see you again, Ash. How's your goal of being a Pokemon Master going? The Colt Pokemon asked excitedly. Ash was going to respond, but of course, Peonia beat him to it. You have no idea. Ash is a champion now. Wait, really? Whoa, Ash, that's awesome. Keldeo said in genuine surprise and amazement, to which Ash replied with a forced smile. But that's just the tip of the iceberg. Would you believe me if I told you he met and took care of the legendary Pokemon they say devours the sun? Wait, no, seriously, Peonia, how on earth do you know that? Ash tried to ask with deadpan face, only for Keldeo to cut him off. What, are you serious? Tell me more. As Peonia quickly stood up from eating and took Keldeo away to explain all of Ash's remarkable achievements, the Pallet Town trainer was left standing there bewildered. He soon noticed 3 pairs of eyes looking at him expectantly, and innocently said, What? Well, aren't you going to explain that too? At Go's words, Ash simply let himself faceplant on the floor exhausted, causing Go, Brandon and Chloe to laugh. 30 minutes passed, and the group were still hanging near the Dyna tree. Peonia still hadn't come back from who knows where with Keldeo. Go and Brandon were taking notes of their surrounding, occasionally taking a couple pictures of the lively wilderness. Pikachu, Eevee and Cinderace were happily running around, meeting and greeting all the new Pokemon nearby, and finally, Ash was taking a well-deserved nap, his signature cap covering his face as he laid on the grassy terrain, peacefully relaxing. Chloe watched from a distance, and eventually decided to go talk to him. She walked up to him, feeling a strange sense of nervousness, and poked him to try and wake him up gently. Ash, no response. She tried once again, poking him with a bit more force, and still no response. This went on for a bit until the maroon-haired girl eventually got fed up and gave up on waking him up gently. Ash, she screamed, practically shoving him. Huh, oh, hey Chloe. The Alolan champion said, sitting up. Sheesh, you should really do something about your sleeping habits, Chloe remarked, as she sat down next to the trainer. Hey, I deserve it this time. Constantly explaining things that happened in the past gets exhausting really fast, he retorted, causing the Vermilion City girl to let out a light chuckle. Oh no. Mr. Champion of Alola gets tired from talking about all the cool things he has achieved. How sad, Chloe teased mockingly, earning an unamused glare from Ash. Very funny, he started off ironically, before changing to a more serious tone. Say, I noticed you were looking kind of off when we were battling that Greedent. You okay? He asked with concern. Chloe thought back to the moment Ash was talking about, and blushed when she realized why she was feeling dazed. Why you worry too much? I'm fine really. You know for a fact I'm not going to believe that, he said, still with the same tone. Chloe considered not saying anything, but decided to be honest, and after sighing, she said, it's just, when I think about it, so much stuff has happened in the past 2 days, and it's hard to wrap my head around it sometimes. Ash seemed to think about Chloe's words for a bit and put his hands behind his head. I get you, even for me, these last few days have been kinda weird, but hey, that's just life sometimes I guess. Chloe looked surprised by Ash's response and scratched her head. I will never get used to your line of thinking. It's actually pretty impressive how you can just go with the flow and take everything as it comes. Guess that's one of the reasons you're pretty famous. Ash looked visibly displeased at Chloe's choice of words, something which didn't go unnoticed by the maroon-haired girl. Chloe grinned and added, what's wrong Ash, don't like being called famous, she teased once again. Chloe, Ash muttered, clearly annoyed. Yes, Mr. Alolan Champion. Or should I say, Mr. Raised a legendary Pokemon. Or maybe, Mr. Befriended a wild Keldeo, or perhaps. Okay Chloe. I get it, Ash screamed, as he laid himself back on the floor and crossed his arms. Chloe did the same thing, all whilst still laughing. They stayed like that for a little while, looking up at the sky laying next to each other, with nothing but the breeze of slight wind disturbing them. Say, why do you always come talk to me when you have nothing else to do? Surely you can annoy Go sometimes too, Ash said, finally breaking the silence. Truth be told, Chloe didn't particularly know how to answer that, and the more she thought about it, the more it didn't make sense. Wait, why do I come to talk to Ash? I could go talk to anyone else here, but why is it so often Ash? Heck, why is it always Ash in everything I do now? Before we left Hammerlock, I went and talked to Ash. On the train, I went and talked to Ash. When we arrived at the Crown Tundra, I noticed Ash in the snowball fight. When I was feeling sad after Articuno, I talked to Ash. When we were battling that Greedent, I noticed Ash, and even just now, why did I go talk to Ash? Ash. The two trainers were interrupted by a certain Pokemon talking in their minds. They looked around and noticed Keldeo now running towards them. Ash stood up ready to greet him. Keldeo, where were you all this time? Ash was quickly interrupted by the Colt Pokemon tackling him straight back to ground, the trainer letting out a gasp from the sudden impact. Ash, I never knew you were so awesome. I can't believe you experienced so many cool things. Man, I'm almost jealous. Oh okay. That's great Keldeo, but, see could you please, get off of me, you're kinda heavy, Ash replied in between breaths. After quickly apologizing and getting off of Ash, Keldeo kept bugging him with plenty of praise. Chloe watched without paying too much attention as to what was going on, as she was once again lost in thought. Why is everything I do around Ash since coming here? Why is Ash so often in my mind? She repeatedly thought to herself. The girl stayed like that for a while until Ash eventually snapped Chloe out of her dazed state. Hey Chloe, let's go back, we're leaving soon, and I don't really feel like getting lectured by Brandon for being late. Again, the trainer said a little sheepishly, pointing to where everyone was. Why yeah, sounds good Ash. She replied unnaturally shyly, to which the Pallet Town trainer raised an eyebrow, but didn't think too much of it. Well, I guess this is goodbye, Keldeo said, with a clear hint of disappointment in his voice, as the group finished packing up their stuff. Despite knowing them for a relatively short while, the Pokemon did truly enjoy their company, as we wasn't often surrounded by many humans. Ah, come on Keldeo. We'll see each other again. I'm sure of it. Ash tried to cheer up to Colt Pokemon, kneeling down in front of him, and lightly patting his head. I'll hold you on that. Well, thanks for everything Keldeo, and good luck with the Swords of Justice. Go expressed sincerely, earning a genuine smile from the mythical Pokemon, as the travelers slowly went off, with everyone in the group saying their goodbyes in their own ways. Keldeo observed them leave with a saddened expression. The Colt Pokemon's expression then suddenly turned hopeful, and just before the group were out of sight, Keldeo quickly ran closer and telepathically screamed, "Hey Ash! One last thing." The group temporarily stopped and turned around, before Keldeo smirked and continued, "Next time we meet, let's have a battle." Ash grinned, and replied, "You bet, I'll be looking forward to it. Make sure to tell the other Swords of Justice I said hi." "Hi Pikachu." The trainer's electric type exclaimed from Ash's shoulder, indicating he agreed with everything his trainer said. The Colt Pokemon watched them all wave from a distance and disappear into the horizon, and once they were out of sight, the part-fighting type dashed off into the now sunset to pursue its training. The group's walk towards their next destination remained a quiet one for the majority, with everybody reflecting on their experiences with both Keldeo and Dynamax Greedent. It was certainly an interesting detour to the Dyna Tree, and all of them wondered what else was in store for them on their journey to the ruins. Before long, the group had reached a familiar location, to which Ash commented on. "Hey, isn't that the old graveyard we visited earlier?" the Alolan champion asked generally, pointing in the direction of the location. "It is," Peonia exclaimed with a slightly surprised tone. "We sure took one heck of a detour." Brandon analyzed his map one last time, before looking up and announcing, "I believe if we keep moving along a little further to the east, we should reach the Roaring Sea Caves soon, and once we've entered, we look for the exit towards the Frigid Sea." "Wait, what do you mean, we look for the exit? Are you saying you don't know how to navigate through the cave?" Go asked with a noticeable concern in his voice, not really liking the idea of running through a cavern blindly in hopes of making it out. "The map I got from the station doesn't detail the insides of the cave, since not a lot of people go through there, so we're going to have to make do," Brandon replied not too convincingly, considering he himself didn't particularly like the idea of entering the large grotto without directions, but he knew it was the simplest way to reach the Frigid Sea, so they didn't really have a choice. "Sounds like a great way for things to go horribly wrong." Again, Chloe mumbled with a deadpan expression, not really wanting to experience another life-threatening event. Without any prior warning to the Vermilion City girl, Ash suddenly put his elbow on Chloe's shoulder and crossed his feet in a casual manner. "Come on guys, everything will be fine. Trust me." The trainer with the Eevee knew the hyperclass trainer only leaned on him in a friendly manner, but her brain seemed to have a temporary shutdown by Ash's sudden close proximity, noticeable by the blank look on her face and her reddened cheeks. Peonia noticed Chloe's reaction and smirked. "I agree with Ash. Everything will be fine. Let's go." She suddenly grabbed Ash's other arm and started forcibly pulling him away from the group and towards their destination, something which neither Ash or Pikachu expected, causing the electric mouse to fall from its current position on top of the Pallet Town native's head and into Chloe's arm. As Ash sheepishly smiled behind him, Chloe turned Pikachu around in her arms, still with the same expression on her face, causing the Pokémon to tilt his head at her. "Why'd I feel so weird around Ash now? What's wrong with me?" the girl said to herself in her mind. She seemed to all of a sudden realize her situation, and quickly exclaimed, "Hey, wait up you two," as the girl quickly chased after them. Brandon and Go watched the scene play out with great amusement and gave each other a knowing smile before also pursuing them. After a little while of running, the group eventually came to a stop when they arrived at a very narrow alleyway between two brick walls, filled to the brim with copperages and stonjourners. Ash, Chloe and Peonia, who were at the front of the group, stood and looked at the path hesitantly. "I don't think I feel very confident in passing through there with those giant Pokémon around," the blonde-haired girl commented. "The map doesn't indicate another close way to reach the Roaring Sea Caves," the Pyramid King added from just behind them, trying to think of a way to get through the narrow path. Go's face suddenly lit up as he quickly thought of something. "Why don't we just use our Pokémon to fly over them?" "Nice thinking, Go. Dragonite, Gengar, I choose you. Flygon, you're up." As the three Pokémon appeared, Chloe and Pikachu, the electric type still in the girl's arms, embarked on Gengar, Peonia jumped on Dragonite, and Brandon went atop of Flygon. Okay. I don't think Gengar can carry more than 2 people, so Ash, one of us can join Brandon on Flygon, and the other can join Peonia. Why are you looking at me like that? Go interrupted himself as he noticed Ash looking at him with a sly smile. We could do that, or, Go took a while before he understood what Ash was getting at, but grinned when he realized his intentions. He seemed to be thinking of something before deciding to make things a bit interesting. Last one to the other side owes the other lunch when we get back. You're on. And so, the pair of researchers dashed off into the alleyway, completely ignoring the fact it was full of strong Pokémon, who probably wouldn't appreciate 2 humans running in between their legs. The 3 trainers on top of their Pokémon simply watched dumbfoundedly at the stupidity and childish nature of the 2 boys. I don't even know what to say at this point, Chloe sighed, with her 2 companions and even the 3 Pokémon they were riding on nodding in agreement, before flying off to the end of the alleyway. It turns out the passageway wasn't a very long distance, as it only took around 10 seconds for Gengar, Flygon and Dragonite to reach the other side. The humans disembarked from the Pokémon and gave them their thanks, before they saw the inevitable sight of Ash and Go weaving their way through the giant Pokémon. They observed the relatively close race with unamused expressions, and Go managed to just about reach the end before Ash, with both trainers being left scratched and bruised. Yes, I won. Go declared proudly with his chest. I think in this scenario you guys both lost, Peonia commented as she saw the roughed-up state of the 2 trainers. Pikachu jumped from Chloe's arms onto Ash's shoulder and looked to be scolding him, which was admittedly a very adorable sight to the rest of the group. Sorry buddy, it was too tempting to not try out, Ash said sheepishly, with Pikachu letting out a disappointed cry. After Go and Ash returned their Pokémon to their Pokéballs and started making their way forwards again, Chloe asked a question to everyone that has been on her mind since they arrived at the Crown Tundra. Say, couldn't we just have the Pokémon carry us all the way to the 3-point pass? Wouldn't that be a lot simpler? It would, but our Pokémon that can fly aren't really made for flying long distances in these conditions. Even a small distance like the alleyway is pretty tiring for Dragonite, Flygon and Gengar because of the cold that they aren't very used to, Go explained. Chloe was about to say Gengar and Dragonite flew quite a distance when they saved both her and Ash from the cliff when they were battling Articuno, but quickly realized that the Pokémon probably suppressed their feelings of the cold because their trainer was, well, in danger of falling off a cliff. Hey look, it's a river, Peonia remarked as she pointed in front of them. And I think that's the entrance to the roaring sea caves just beyond it, the Battle Frontier Brain said additionally. After quickly making their way over the river and past the multiple abandoned structures, the group were now standing in front of the cavern entrance, looking a lot more ominous and scary than they originally thought. I suddenly have a bad feeling about this, Go admitted. This was no longer the time for jokes or friendly wagers. They didn't know what the cave ahead of them contained, so they better be on their toes at all times. Stay close everyone, we don't know what could be waiting for us inside, Brandon warned, earning a silent nod of understanding from everyone as they took the first steps into the deep cavern. Whoa, this place sure is a lot darker than I thought, Peonia mentioned as she noticed that apart from the light coming from the entrance they just took, the roaring sea caves were almost pitch black. Hey buddy, mind giving us a little light? Ash's electric partner jumped off his trainer's shoulder and formed a little electro web on his tail, using it as a makeshift light source. The Pallet Town trainer frowned, as the move didn't illuminate the cave as much as he originally hoped. Not enough, huh? Chloe, can you ask Eevee to help out? The maroon-haired girl nodded, and Eevee ran up next to Pikachu, and after its tail glowed yellow. A similar web of electricity could be seen on the normal type's tail, illuminating the cave even more. Ash quickly thanked the trainer and her Eevee with a smile, earning a slightly flustered response from the Vermilion City girl, which no one paid too much attention to. Smart thinking Ketchum, stay close everyone, Brandon ordered as the group shuffled closer to Pikachu and Eevee's light source. They kept moving forward in silence, everybody slightly creeped out by the huge cavern. After a while, some strange grunts started to be heard from further out into the cave, sending chills down the young trainer's spines. Go noted Brandon wasn't at all fazed by the weird noises, and assumed he had been in these types of situations before, so he felt relieved at least one of them was keeping calm. After 5 minutes or so, the group eventually reached a fork in the path. Where do we go from here? Go asked, not really knowing which way would lead them to the exit towards the frigid sea. Ash pondered the group's predicament for a moment, and soon enough, an idea came to him. The trainer quickly pulled out a familiar Pokeball. "Lucario, help us out." At the appearance of the fighting steel type, Ash approached his Pokemon and asked, "Lucario, do you think you can use your aura to try and sense an exit near the sea?" The Pokemon in question nodded loyally before turning to face the two paths. Its eyes suddenly flared a bright blue and some visible aura waves could be seen going in both directions. The aura Pokemon stood there in silence, before he sensed a cold breeze coming from the path to the right. Its eyes returned to their normal colors and Ash's Pokemon pointed to the right with a cry. "Wow! That sure is some impressive aura," Peonia complimented, earning a sheepish smile from Lucario, similar to one its trainer would give. "Thanks, Lucario. All right, return," Ash said as he tried recalling his Pokemon, only for it to dodge the red beam coming from the Pokeball. "Lucario?" the hyperclass trainer asked worriedly. Ash then suddenly felt a burst of aura sent by his Pokemon, making him flinch slightly. The Alola champion's face turned serious before saying, "I see, you sensed something else down that path as well. Let's be careful, guys." As Ash, Pikachu, Eevee and Lucario started making their way further into the cave again, Chloe, Go and Peonia were momentarily taken aback, wondering how Ash flawlessly understood what Lucario was trying to say. They simultaneously looked at Brandon, who simply waved it off, as if to say not to question it. The trio of young trainers blinked a couple times before quickly catching up to the Pallet Town trainer and the other Pokemon. After a little more quiet walking, the travelers reached a vast clearing. They were about to continue, but Lucario suddenly put an arm up as if to tell the group to stop. Ash was about to inquire about his act, but the aura Pokemon indicated with his paw to stay quiet. It looked at Pikachu and seemed to tell him something. After hearing Lucario's words, the electric type quietly charged up a bigger electro web on its tail and shot it straight at the ceiling, illuminating the clearing fully, and revealing the sight of two sleeping Hydreigons in the center of the room and multiple Golbats sleeping on the walls. Go and Chloe were about to gasp loudly, but Brandon and Ash quickly covered their mouths so they wouldn't make any noise. "Don't make any noise, they probably wouldn't be very happy to be awakened in their sleep," Ash whispered to Chloe, still covering her mouth with his hand. The girl in question nodded with her eyes widened as Brandon and Ash both slowly removed their hands. "There seems to be multiple rooms connected to this clearing. Lucario, which path do we need to take?" Brandon asked, to which the Pokemon replied by pointing to the path at the far end of the room, behind the Hydreigons. "All right. Let's walk past them very slowly, okay?" The rest of the group nodded in comprehension, before starting to tiptoe their way to the path at the end of the clearing. Everything seemed to be going fine, the group making it about halfway without any troubles. Ash quietly said, "We're almost there, just a little more." Crack! Everybody instantly froze up at the sound of Go stepping on a branch. The trainers looked at each other, hoping and praying that the noise didn't wake up the nearby Pokemon. After an uncomfortably long silence, the Pokemon were seemingly still fast asleep. They breathed a sigh of relief. Then all of a sudden, one of the Hydreigon's eyes shot open, and the Pokemon stared at the humans. It didn't have an initial reaction, and the group almost thought the dragon type wasn't going to do anything, until the Hydreigon suddenly let out a loud cry. "Aura sphere on the electro web!" Ash instinctively yelled out, causing Lucario to shoot a sphere of blue energy at the electro web on the ceiling, causing the light from the electricity to disappear. Chloe's Eevee caught on quickly to Ash's idea and disintegrated the electro web on its tail, causing the room to once again become pitch black. The wild Pokemon screeched loudly and multiple explosions, most likely caused by their moves, could be heard. The group, not being able to see anything, ran in multiple different directions, desperately trying to avoid the attacks of all the Golbats and Hydreigon and find their way out of the room. With Ash and Chloe, well, that could have probably gone better. Ash put a hand on the wall, panting a bit from the running he did. With nobody responding, the Pallet Town trainer worriedly called out, "Hello? Anyone?" "Brar!" exclaimed his fighting-type Pokemon. He smiled, happy knowing he wasn't at least completely alone in the cave. Not another sound was heard, so Ash assumed they had lost the others whilst running from the wild Pokemon. He sighed and turned towards his loyal Pokemon. Ash tilted his head in confusion, because despite it being completely dark, he could surprisingly still see the outline of Lucario, surrounded by a blue aura. Huh, cool, I should really ask someone about this whole aura thing. It really confuses me with what it can do sometimes, the part-time researcher thought out loud, scratching his head. Lucario simply shrugged in reply. The aura Pokémon suddenly felt a presence coming and let out a cry to warn its trainer. Ash looked in the direction his Pokémon was sensing and waited for the presence to make any noise to try and decipher who it was. Geez, why is this cave so dark anyways? Would it have hurt anyone to put some torches or candles here or there? Chloe, Ash exclaimed, immediately recognizing the voice. Ash, she expressed in a similar tone. Are the others with you? No, we must have all gotten separated when those Pokémon started attacking us. Lucario is the only one with me. Oh, I see. She suddenly started to get a bit embarrassed and shyly asked. See, could Lucario give us a bit of light? It's kinda scary not being able to see anything. Oh, right. Lucario, please. The Pokémon obeyed the orders of its trainer and held an aura sphere in its left paw. It wasn't nearly as efficient as an electro web like Pikachu or Eevee had, barely even allowing Ash and Chloe to see each other's faces, despite them being quite close to each other. Yeah, I don't think this is gonna help us all that much, Ash admitted, making Lucario visibly disappointed in itself. The hyperclass trainer reassured his Pokémon that it was no big deal. Chloe looked visibly distressed, and Ash couldn't help but tease her. What's wrong, Chloe? Scared? Shut it, Ash. She replied angrily as a tinge of pink appeared on her cheeks, causing Ash to laugh at her reaction, with even Lucario snickering a bit. The trainer extended his hand and said, Come on, let's go find the others, we can use Lucario's aura to guide us, he said with a genuine smile. The girl contemplated nervously for a bit, before slowly taking Ash's hand as the pair followed behind Lucario, making their way through the cave. It was safe to say Chloe was now pretty happy that the little light Lucario's aura sphere provided didn't allow Ash to clearly see the blush on her face. With Peonia, woo, that was a close one, but I'm glad we made it to the exit, Peonia exclaimed, relieved, as she safely made her way out of the cave, allowing her to observe the wonderful sight of the frigid sea. She turned around and noticed that the only other familiar face present was no other than Pikachu, who simply looked at her, confused. Wait, where are the others? She asked, not particularly to anyone. Pikachu also seemed to just notice their other friends and his trainer were nowhere to be found. They must have gotten lost after we woke up those wild Pokémon. Pikapi, the electric type, sighed, in his mind wondering why this situation always seems to happen. Well, there's nothing much more we can do apart from just waiting for them. It wouldn't be smart to try and find them. Pikachu nodded at the blonde-haired girl's train of thinking, and the duo decided to simply wait on a nearby wooden log, using it as a bench. An uncomfortable silence occurred between the two of them, with nothing making any noise at all apart from the cries of the innocent local wild Pokémon. Peonia put her elbows on her knees and put her chin on her palms in a bored manner. I hope the others are okay, Pika. A second uncomfortable silence occurred, causing Peonia's mind to wonder. Well, this is awkward. I'm stuck here for who knows how much time waiting for the others to come, and the only other thing I can talk to is Ash's Pikachu. The blonde-haired girl's eyes widened as she fully realized her current situation. Wait a second, I'm stuck here, with Ash's Pikachu. This is a perfect opportunity for me to ask him a bunch of questions. Peonia internally told herself to calm down and cleared her throat loudly. Say Pikachu, let's say, just as a random question that I'd definitely never thought about before, if you just had to choose which one of Ash's companions is your favorite, who would you pick? Pikachu seemed surprised at Peonia's question, then looked as if it was pondering for a bit, before finally saying, Pi Pikachu Pi Pika. The electric type said proudly with his arms crossed. Peonia's sweat dropped, obviously not understanding a single word Pikachu had just said. This might be harder than I thought, she muttered out loud. With Go and Brandon, why can't anything go right on this trip, Go said, sighing, crossing his arms looking frustrated. Eevee, said Chloe's Eevee in a similar manner. More importantly, is everyone all right? Brandon asked, more preoccupied with the safety of everyone. I'm fine. Eevee, could you use Electro Web again to illuminate the cave? The normal type did what it was asked, and it alongside Brandon and Go all got concerned when they noticed they were missing more than half of the group. Must have lost them when the group of Pokemon attacked, the Pyramid King deducted. I hope they're okay. What do we do now, Brandon? The renowned frontier brain closed his eyes and put a hand on his chin in a thinking manner. The others are smart enough to know it probably isn't safe to look for the rest of us in such a dark and dangerous cave, so we should try our best and find the exit and hope they make it there as well. The Vermilion City researcher didn't particularly like the fact Brandon used the word hope to signify they were basically relying on the others to make it out by themselves, but he knew they didn't really have a choice in this situation. Okay, let's move forwards then. Eevee, I hope you don't mind holding the Electro Web on your tail for us. The evolution Pokemon nodded but looked noticeably sad at the fact it was separated from its trainer. The Project Mew participant kneeled down next to it and gently patted its head. Don't worry, Eevee, I'm sure Chloe will be fine. She's probably with Ash or Peonia, so no need to worry. Go smiled hopefully at her childhood friend's first Pokemon, and the Pokemon in question seemed to cheer up a little bit, and proceeded to lead them ahead. As the two humans and familiar Pokemon walked, Brandon and Go conversed to pass the time, and Go brought up a subject he wanted to discuss with the Pyramid King for a while now. Hey Brandon, this might sound a bit weird to you, but don't you think Chloe has been a bit clingy to Ash ever since yesterday? The researcher initially asked. The established trainer looked at him smugly. You think she likes him, don't you? He replied as he got straight to the point. Well, I didn't say that, but, look, I don't nearly know the girl as much as you must do, but from what I observed, she has slowly been getting more attached to him as time passed by, especially compared to the first day I met you all. Don't remind me, that whole day was a mess, Go admitted as he recalled how Ash and Chloe seemed to absolutely despise each other that day. Brandon let out a light chuckle and continued. I might not be too knowledgeable when it comes to feelings and emotions of others compared to other things, but what I can tell you is that there's a possibility she does feel something towards him, although she may not realize it yet. But the way things have been going recently, she may very well know soon. You just might be right on that, Brandon. Either way, I can't deny that I'm actually pretty intrigued with how this progresses. Peonia also seems like she might play a part in this. Well, just have to wait, and Go abruptly ended his sentence as the pair heard a growl coming from just up ahead. You heard that too, right? Brandon simply nodded as he reached for a Pokeball, but didn't call the Pokemon out. The two trainers and Eevee slowly kept walking, the noise getting louder and louder. The evolution Pokemon holding the mini-group's light source was getting increasingly more nervous, and eventually after another loud growl, the Pokemon panicked and threw its Electro Web forward, only for it to get completely shattered by a Pokemon charging into it, enveloped in a strange bright blue aura. Was that Dragon Dive? Go thought the worst and quickly told Eevee. Eevee, stick another Electro Web to the ceiling. The normal type did just that, and once the room was illuminated fully, they realized they were back to the same room the group got separated in, and unfortunately joined by the same two Hydreigons, not looking at all happy with the group's appearance. Brandon quickly released Regice from the Pokeball that was already in his hand. The legendary Ice type stood menacing in front of Go, Brandon and Eevee, making the two Dragon types visibly nervous, but nevertheless prepared attacks. Flygon, Dragon Rush. Go called out as he threw Flygon's Pokeball, the Pokemon instantly enveloping itself in a blue aura and meeting both of the Hydreigons head-on, who used the same move. Flygon recoiled back from the attacks of the two wild Pokemon, but shook it off. They don't look particularly happy to see us again, Go commented, with Eevee standing nervously by his side. Looks like we're in for another battle. Go gritted his teeth before looking at Eevee. Eevee, we're gonna need your help. I know I'm not Chloe, but I need you to follow my commands, alright? The Pokemon seemed to hesitate a bit, but nevertheless stood in front of Go and let out a cry of affirmation. At the sight of this, the Hydreigons simultaneously let out an intimidating roar and both launched a flamethrower at Flygon and Regice. Brandon, wanting to test the strengths of their opponents, decided to meet the attack head-on. Zap Cannon. Dragon Breath Flygon. You too, Eevee. The 5 moves collided, creating an explosion in the center of the room. Brandon frowned at the realization they were equally matched in terms of raw power, but still went on the offensive. Ice Beam Regice, he ordered, with Go ordering Eevee to use the Iceberg Pokemon's attack as well. The two brutal Pokemon almost effortlessly dodged the 2 beams of ice by flying higher and higher, making Brandon and Go realize just how big the room really was. After Regis and Eevee stopped their attacks, they flew around the dimly lit cavern area in unison, almost as if to intimidate the humans and Pokémon. The Pyramid King, knowing they would probably dodge any easy attack, went back to his trusty strategy. "Lock on," he ordered. Regis quickly formed a red ring that went after one of the Hydreigons. The other one, not liking his friend being chased, dashed towards Brandon's Pokémon whilst using Dragon Rush. Go quickly noticed this and knew what he had to do. "Oh no you don't. Intercept it with your own Dragon Rush, Flygon." The Hydreigon clearly didn't expect this and in turn, got tackled by the same move it was using by Go's part Dragon type, launching it straight into the nearest wall. Go wasn't done just yet, as he swiftly commanded his friend's normal type. "Eevee, Dragon Rush and go after the other Hydreigon." "Eevee!" exclaimed the evolution Pokémon, as its tail glowed blue and pretty comically chased down the other Dragon type. The Hydreigon did dodge the attack, but didn't have enough time to run away from the lock-on still chasing after it. Seeing this, Brandon was about to call out his move, but Go stopped him right before. "Wait, I have an idea to end this quickly," he said in a serious tone. The Regi master looked at him curiously. Brandon wasn't usually the type to let himself be given orders, especially by a trainer as young as Go, but he knew from previous experiences that young trainers can truly come up with something special when determined, and judging by the expression on his face, the Vermilion City researcher was very clearly determined, so he let it play out. "Flygon, Dragon Breath on the Hydreigon near the wall. Force it upwards." The mystic Pokémon did just that, and after launching a Dragon Breath, the Hydreigon went and joined its friend in the air. "All right, Draco Meteor." Brandon raised an eyebrow at Go's choice of move but stayed silent as multiple purple meteors came crashing down from a cloud formed near the roof of the cavern. "Now Brandon. Ice Beam Regis. Ice Beam you too Eevee, aim it at the cloud." As the two Hydreigons were flying in the air, trying to avoid the meteors from the sky, Regis launched a beam of ice at the Hydreigon it had targeted with lock-on, and despite the brutal Pokémon's best efforts, it got hit, freezing a part of its wings. While this was happening, Eevee was shooting its own ice beam at the cloud that was forming the meteors, making it so the next meteors that came crashing down were now covered with a coat of ice. Brandon's eyes widened slightly when he finally realized what Go was trying to do. Regis, freezing one of the Hydreigon's wings made it so the Pokémon couldn't dodge the super effective move Draco Meteor, and by making Eevee freeze the cloud the meteors were forming from, it added a layer of ice to the Dragon-type move, and since Dragon-type Pokémon are weak to both Dragon and Ice, it made an already effective move even more effective. As one of the Hydreigons was getting assaulted by the now 4 times super effective move, the other tried its best to dodge the incoming meteors, but with Brandon and Go ordering their Pokémon to use Zap Cannon and Dragon Breath against it, the Pokémon couldn't avoid the 3 moves it was being targeted by, and so suffered the same fate as the other Hydreigon. The 2 Dragon types were eventually knocked to the ground once the final meteors from Flygon's move hit them, and they stayed immobile on the ground because of the assault of super effective moves Brandon and Go had done. "All right, we did it," Go exclaimed happily, as he hugged both his Flygon and Chloe's Eevee. Brandon smiled and returned his Regis after thanking him, then turned to face Go. "Impressive battling there, kid. That was smart thinking to make an already super effective move in Draco Meteor even more effective by adding a layer of ice to the move. You've improved greatly since the last time we battled together," the Pyramid King admitted. Go sheepishly thanked Brandon, a bit embarrassed by the praise of such a respected battler. The duo turned their heads towards the 2 Hydreigons, who took one look at the ceiling and quickly flew away. The humans looked to the ceiling themselves and to their shock, the ceiling was caving in, most likely due to the powerful moves they had been using. "Oh no! The ceiling's collapsing," Go said, horrified at the sight. "Quick, onto Flygon, let's hurry out." At Brandon's words, Brandon, Go and Eevee all jumped on the mystic Pokémon's back, who quickly flew towards the direction its trainer was pointing right before the ceiling collapsed onto them. "With Peonia, Pikachu for Arceus's sake, it's just a simple question. You don't have to think about it for so long," Peonia said, absolutely deflated to the Pokémon currently with her. Pikachu. The electric type responded back in an angry manner, before pondering about something again. Peonia couldn't tell you how much time had passed since the two had originally been separated from the group. All she knew was that it felt like an eternity. Originally, She thought being here alone with Ash's Pikachu would have been a golden opportunity to learn more about the starter of a trainer she appreciated so much, but the problem was that the mouse Pokémon just couldn't make up his mind on anything. It wasn't as if her questions were particularly very in-depth or tricky. Pikachu was just exceptionally indecisive. Peonia's most recent question was asking what Pikachu's favorite region was, and she swore it had been, at the very least, 10 minutes and the Pokémon still hadn't decided. The girl had drawn up 8 circles on the ground with a tree branch, each representing a region. All Pikachu had to do was put a leaf on the circle representing which region he preferred. Pikachu, just pick one at this point, seriously. The Tyrantrum trainer sighed and laid down on the ground, holding her face in exhaustion. The electric type wasn't having none of it and shushed the trainer with a paw. He was surprisingly taking this very seriously, too seriously if you asked Peonia. The blonde-haired girl turned her head and saw Pikachu's face light up before the Pokémon ran towards the circle representing the Sinnoh region. He hesitated before gently dropping the leaf in his arms into the circle. Wait, does that mean? Why, you've finally decided, Peonia exclaimed hopefully. Pikachu, facing his back toward the girl, didn't say or do anything for a good 15 seconds. Peony's daughter's look was one of curiosity at the sight, before quickly turning into horror as she saw Ash's Pokémon shake his head and pick up the leaf it had placed in the circle and went straight back to contemplating his options. Peonia let out a scream of agony so loud that Pikachu was pretty sure the others could hear her despite them most likely still being in an isolated cavern. With Ash and Chloe didn't particularly like the slightly awkward silence that was present ever since Ash and Lucario started to make their way through the cave, but she couldn't find out what to say to break it. The maroon-haired girl had wanted to start a conversation since they originally decided to go and find the others or find an exit, but every time she was about to say something, the girl would suddenly get really flustered and end up not saying anything at all. Whilst Ash was quietly whistling to himself in a cheerful manner, Chloe was having what could be described as some sort of existential crisis in her mind. Come on, Chloe. You've talked to Ash plenty of times before. What's so different now? She unconsciously glanced at her and Ash's joined hands before Ash finally broke the silence. You're awfully quiet, the Pallet Town trainer expressed bluntly, making the girl beside her flinch. Chloe's response was once again based on the first thing that came to her mind. I'm just worried about Evie. I hope she's okay. Whilst there was certainly some truth in her words, that definitely wasn't the main reason why she was so silent. Ash seemed to believe her and reassure the girl. I'm sure she's fine. She's probably with the others. Chloe nodded, even though Ash probably couldn't see her face, when Lucario suddenly stopped and looked ahead curiously, causing its trainer to almost bump into him. What's wrong, Lucario? The Pokémon pointed further in the distance with a cry and Ash looked in surprise. Is that light? Chloe looked equally surprised when she noticed the sudden luminance further in the cavern. Without a word, Lucario and Ash dashed off to investigate, the latter almost making the maroon-haired girl stumble because of their still connected hands. Hey, Ash, hold up. The hyperclass trainer ignored her and only came to a stop when they finally arrived in the room with the light source, and it was not at all what they were expecting. Whoa, Ash first said, mouth agape, as Lucario disintegrated the aura sphere in its paw with a similar expression on its face. Chloe looked up and gasped at what she saw. The room turned out to be illuminated by tons of shiny crystals that lit up the cavern majestically with colorful reflections. The crystallized stones were scattered around everywhere, from the walls to the ceiling, and there was also a small lake in the middle of the room. There were no Pokémon in sight, but that didn't take away from just how breathtaking the view was. It truly was a sight to behold. It's so beautiful, the Vermilion City girl said, still stunned at the wonderful scenery hidden deep within a random cave. The aura Pokémon's eyes suddenly flared a bright blue as the part steel type suddenly sensed a presence coming towards them, seeming traversing rapidly underneath the water. Ash, Lucario and Chloe all looked towards the pond when all of a sudden, a little Omanite arrived next to them, panting and looking all scratched and bruised. Oh my Arceus, she whispered, covering her mouth with her hand in shock. The water type had a pleading look on its face, practically begging for their help. Ash was quick to act and dropped his bag to the floor and quickly pulled out a potion. He sprayed it onto the spiral Pokémon, who flinched at the feeling and looked terrified. It's okay, Omanite, we're not going to hurt you, the trainer said softly. The Pokemon's expression seemed to soften at Ash's words and he let himself be treated by the stranger. After spraying the potion, the Alolan champion took some bandages once again for his bag and placed some on the multiple bruises and scratches of the Omanite. Ash gave a reassuring smile when he finished, and told the water type, "There, that should be better, right?" Omanite nodded gratefully when they were suddenly interrupted by the sound of an explosion near the crystallized walls. It sounded like Ash's aura Pokemon shot an aura sphere at something, so Ash, Chloe and Omanite turned to Lucario, only to see it growling furiously at something. They turned once again towards where the explosion occurred and saw two Golbats and a Crobat flying towards them at high speeds. Omanite started to freak out and Ash and Chloe barely had time to react when they saw the bats firing an air slash at them. Just before the move hit the group, Ash grabbed Omanite and Lucario grabbed Chloe and they threw themselves to the ground, narrowly avoiding the light blue blades. Lucario stood defensively in front of the group, almost trying to threaten the bats who were not showing any signs of backing down. The Pallet Town native quickly pulled out a Pokeball and threw it in the air. "Dracovish, I choose you." Chloe barely even had time to realize Ash called out a Pokemon when Dracovish suddenly bit Ash's head. "Come on Dracovish. This is really not the time for this," he screamed from inside the fossil Pokemon's mouth. "Hey, are you okay?" Chloe said worriedly at the sight, only for Ash to wave it off. "Why yeah, this happens all the time," the hyperclass trainer replied, forcibly trying to get his lovable Pokemon to let go of him. He eventually got out and ordered, "Oh okay Dracovish, I'm entrusting you to Chloe, focus on the battle please, you can eat my head another time." Dracovish. The Pokemon excitedly exclaimed as it ran to Chloe and stood in front of her protectively, which admittedly was a pretty funny sight to behold as it changed its expression to a more serious one. What do you mean entrusting him to me?" the girl nervously shouted out. "You know Dracovish's moves right?" After seeing her nod nervously, Ash grinned. "Then you'll be just fine Chloe, I believe in you." The Vermilion City girl wasn't at all confident in her battling abilities and didn't like the idea of commanding one of Ash's Pokemon one bit. She had barely even battled with Eevee at all, and now she was supposed to deal with 3 rampaging Pokemon. Chloe looked at Ash once again and saw him smiling, wordlessly telling her he truly had faith in her. She blushed and shook her head aggressively. She knew she had been pretty much useless this entire trip, and this was her opportunity to make up for it. With 3 wild Pokemon in front of her, one of Ash's Pokemon by her side, and Ash's own support, she could do this. Scratch that. She needed to do this, to prove to herself that she was worthy of being with everyone on this trip, and to prove to herself that she wasn't a burden. The girl exhaled, and finally said, "All right, Dracovish, please lend me your strength." As the part dragon type nodded happily at her with a cry, Ash smiled even more at the scene, still holding the scared Omanite in his arms. "That's the spirit Chloe. All right, let's do this, Lucario." "Brar." The Pokemon replied confidently, as it got into a battle stance in front of Ash. "Aura Sphere." Water Gun. As the 2 moves went on a crash course for the 3 flying-type Pokemon, the trio of bats seemed to laugh at their attempts to battle them and dodge the moves with ease. The Crobat seemed to give orders to the Golbats and proceeded to fire off a tailwind, forcing the trainers and Pokemon to dig their feet into the ground, all whilst the Golbats shot out air cutters at the opposing Pokemon, who were unable to dodge the attacks due to the heavy winds of tailwind pushing against them. "Arg. We need to get rid of this wind. We're not going to be able to do much with this tailwind," Ash warned, still struggling to stand his ground against the wind, while the bats laughed even louder. Chloe was in a similar state, and tried to think of something, but considering she didn't have any previous battle experience, nothing quickly came to mind. "Okay Chloe, think, what have you seen Ash or Go do to deal with something like this?" She pondered a bit. Lucario couldn't really deal with the wind considering his moveset, but maybe Dracovish had something he could use. A sudden memory from when the first day they arrived in Hammerlock flashed in Chloe's mind, specifically when Team Rocket showed up. "Pikachu. Counter Shield." Rang in her mind, as Chloe vividly remembered the made-up move Ash and Pikachu used back then. She looked towards Dracovish and saw him still under the barrage of air cutters, and thought she might as well try to replicate the counter shield. "Dracovish. Get on your back and spin whilst using Water Gun." The Vermilion City girl screamed through the wind. The fossil Pokemon happily complied despite not really knowing the motive of its temporary trainer. Chloe took cover on the ground as Dracovish got on its back and spun around rapidly whilst firing jets of water, causing them to fly everywhere around the room, even occasionally hitting Crobat and the Golbats, and dispel the tailwind. Chloe looked in surprise at the fact the move actually worked, and Ash, equally in shock, said, "W was that counter shield?" "I guess," she exclaimed awkwardly, not really knowing what to do or say. "That was awesome, Chloe," though. Chloe turned to face Ash and Lucario and her eyes widened when she saw them both soaking wet from the jets of water Dracovish fired off. "A warning next time would be great," Ash finished off sheepishly. Lucario also let out a cry signifying it agreed with its trainer. "Sorry. I forgot," the girl flusteredly replied. Ash waved it off and took off his winter jacket and cap while Lucario shook its body like a dog to try and dry off. Chloe blushed and looked at the ground when she saw Ash's soaked hair, but the trainer was too focused on the battle to notice. "Alright, Lucario. How about we show these Pokemon what we're made of?" Ash exclaimed as Lucario got back into a battle stance. "Run." The Aura Pokemon dashed towards the three bats, who have since recovered from their hits, and one of the Golbats made the horrible mistake of trying to meet Lucario head-on with a bite. Double team. The Golbat rushing towards Ash's Pokemon looked in shock as it appeared to bite through Lucario, only to find out it was only a fake. In its confused state, it failed to notice Chloe call out another water gun which sent Bat Pokemon crashing into the wall with another powerful gush of water, with no signs of getting up. One down. Force Palm. Seeing its friend being taken down from rushing in, the second Golbat kept its distance with Air Slash as three bright blue blades raced towards the Aura Pokemon. Lucario dodged the first one, ducked under the second one, and broke the third one with a Force Palm. The bat looked in horror as Lucario effortlessly dealt with its attack and jumped towards it. The Aura Pokemon used another Force Palm on the Golbat's back, which sent the Pokemon crashing towards Dracovish, who finished it off after Chloe ordered an Ice Fang, which threw the Pokemon to the opposite wall. Two down. Lucario stared down the Crobat from the edge of the water, as the Pokemon had reached the beginning lake, waiting for its trainer's orders. "Jump, Lucario." Once the Crobat saw Lucario trying to close the distance, it quickly used Double Team to surround the Aura Pokemon in an attempt to confuse it. "You know where the real one is." Aura Sphere. Still in the air, Lucario's eye flared blue once more. The Pokemon smirked and shot an Aura Sphere at one of the multiple Crobats, which to the Bat Pokemon's surprise, hit the real one, and sent it flying to the wall just like its friends, and stayed there immobile. Lucario ended off by swiftly jumping from one of the sidewalls and landing right back in front of Ash as its eyes returned to their normal colors. "And that's three down." Chloe immediately jumped for joy and ran towards Ash and Lucario. In all of her excitement, she tackled Ash into a bear hug, which greatly surprised the Pallet Town native. "All right. We did it, Ash. That was so cool. I didn't know you and Lucario were so in sync," she complimented excitedly, still clinging onto Ash. "Me? How about you? I didn't even know Dracovish could pull off a counter shield," Ash replied in a similar manner to Chloe. The two smiled at each other before Chloe's expression suddenly turned to panic when she realized what she was doing. She pulled away from him and turned her back to him in an attempt to make him not see the huge blush on her face. Sorry, I don't know what came over me," she exclaimed, clearly very flustered. It's fine really," Ash replied, almost as equally flustered, scratching the back of his head embarrassingly. An awkward silence occurred, as both humans were clearly embarrassed. Lucario snickered at the trainers as it gave Dracovish a high five, the fossil Pokemon using its fins to happily comply. Ash saw this from the corner of his eye and laughed. "Good work, you guys, you battled really well." Chloe seemed to remember something which caused her to leave her embarrassed state and run towards Dracovish and pat its head. "Thank you so much, Dracovish, you were awesome." The Pokemon excitedly tried to say thank you, but was clearly unable to relay its message properly, as Dracovish bit on Chloe's head instead. "Hey, Dracovish, let me go." The Omanite still in Ash's arms chuckled an adorable laugh at the scene and Ash simply smiled at them, feeling a strange sense of happiness he wasn't familiar with. Seeing Chloe interact so amicably with one of his own Pokemon made him feel something that he couldn't quite put his finger on. Ash saw the Crobat and Golbats flee from the scene in the distance, then looked at Omanite. "Those Pokémon shouldn't bother you anymore, Omanite," he said softly. The Pokémon smiled and let out a cry of happiness. Chloe noted something was coming towards them from the water and warned her friend. Ash, something's coming from underneath the water," the maroon-haired girl said with uncertainty. Ash looked curiously at the sight, and Omnade suddenly started to squirm in joy and made its way towards the shore, where to the group's surprise, a bunch of Omanites and Omastars appeared. They seemed confused and a little scared at the sight of humans and Pokémon they didn't recognize, but the Omanite Ash and Chloe rescued reassured them that they were friendly and had dealt with the wild bats. They looked surprised but then let out a bunch of cries expressing their gratitude. "Huh, those Golbats and Crobats must have been causing issues for these Pokémon," Chloe noted. "Seems like it," Ash replied, before facing the group of water-type Pokémon. "Don't worry everyone, those Pokémon shouldn't bother you anymore." Another wave of thankful cries occurred, and the familiar Omnade approached them, seemingly trying to tell them something. Chloe tilted her head, but Ash seemed to understand the message it was trying to relay. "You want to repay us, don't you?" The Pokémon nodded excitedly as Ash was spot on. Ash smiled and said, "Well actually, we got separated from our group earlier and we're trying to find our friends. Could you tell us where the nearest exit is?" The Omanite turned to the rest of their friends and told them something Ash and Chloe couldn't understand. They proceeded to line up, trying to tell the humans to follow them. Ash looked at Chloe and exclaimed, "Looks like they're trying to lead us to the exit. Let's follow them, Chloe." The Vermilion City girl nodded as Ash recalled Dracovish and Lucario and called out Dragonite. The hyperclass trainer hopped on his flying type and extended a hand out to his companion. The girl shyly took his hand and climbed atop Dragonite. "Hold on tight, Omanite can swim pretty fast," Ash noted. Chloe nodded once again as she gripped Ash's shirt tightly, his jacket around his waist as it was still soaked from Dracovish's water gun. She looked down blushing and came slightly closer to Ash on the back of Dragonite, the trainer seemingly not minding at all, as they followed behind the Omanites and Omastars. Pika, the electric type, poked the cheek of Peonia's seemingly lifeless body, laying on the ground. The Pokémon still hadn't chosen which region was his favorite, noted by the big green leaf still in his tiny arms. Pikachu poked Peonia again and finally got a reaction. "What do you want now, Pikachu?" she said, completely exhausted. The Pokémon frowned as she failed to notice the sound of an explosion coming from inside the cave. Pikachu then sensed something towards them and quickly stood defensively in front of the entrance, not knowing if what was coming was friendly or not. Thankfully, he let out a happy cry when he noticed it was none other than Go, Brandon and Eevee, who finally found the exit, riding on the back of Flygon. "Woo, that was close," Go admitted, as he, Brandon and Eevee got off the ground Dragon-type. He thanked Flygon before recalling it to its Pokeball. "Hi Pikachu. Pikachu, and Peonia?" the Vermilion City researcher said questioningly, as he saw the blonde-haired girl behind Pikachu looking lifeless on the ground. "Hey there," she replied in a monotone voice. "Looks like we certainly missed something," Brandon deduced, before asking about the other missing people. "Have Ash and Chloe made it out yet?" Pikachu was about to shake his head but was interrupted by Eevee, who let out a cry of joy when it saw its trainer exit the cave via a nearby river with Ash and Dragonite, and a bunch of Omanite and Omastar. "Eevee!" Chloe exclaimed as Dragonite dropped her off next to her Pokémon. "I'm so glad you're okay," she exclaimed as the Vermilion City girl hugged her first Pokémon tightly in her arms. Ash meanwhile recalled Dragonite and said goodbye to the friendly water types who led them to the exit, who returned to their home in the cave. Ash then walked up next to Chloe. "Hey guys, we made it. Glad to see you two made it out just fine, though Ash, you look kinda soaked. You fall in a lake or something?" Go asked, noting his hair was all wet and his jacket was around his waist. Chloe's blush didn't go unnoticed by Go, and Ash looked at the maroon-haired girl before replying. "And no, not quite." Go narrowed his eyes but didn't add anything. "Where's Pikachu and Peonia? Are they okay?" Ash then asked generally, a little worried about their new friend and his starter Pokémon. Brandon raised his eyebrows and pointed behind him. "Take a look for yourself," he said bluntly. Ash looked past the experienced trainer and his face lit up when he saw his best friend, who waved at him happily. The trainer's expression quickly turned into confusion as he noticed Pikachu holding a leaf, standing idly next to Peonia, who looked somewhat depressed, surrounded by plenty of circles featuring the names of all the regions he had visited. Ash approached the two and patted his Pokemon's head. "Hey buddy, Peonia, what on earth happened? Don't ever ask Pikachu questions, trust me, it won't end well," she said firmly as she sat on the ground, holding her head. The Pallet Town trainer frowned, even more confused than before. Just what exactly did you ask him? What his favorite region he visited was. It's been I don't know how long and he still hasn't decided. Ash knelt down and looked at his favorite electric type questioningly. Pikachu's favorite region? Surely Alola, right? Pikachu's eyes seemed to widen as he most likely realized Ash was right, and climbed up Ash's shoulder and nuzzled his trainer's cheek, agreeing with his words. Peonia's mouth went agape. She stood up from the ground and slowly walked up to Ash, fistballed, who looked at her nervously. What? His favorite companion? The blonde-haired girl said in a tone that sent shivers down both Ash and Pikachu's spines. You probably Don. Pikapi. Pikachu replied with a nod. A solid 10 seconds passed, where nobody said a word, and nobody moved an inch. The silence was only broken by the sound of Peonia practically throwing her head into the nearby river and screaming at the top of her lungs. Nobody really knew what to do or say. The rest of the group were just kind of stunned. After a while, the sound of another splash of water alongside the sight of Peonia's now soaking wet face broke the trainers out of their trances. "Woo. I'm okay," the girl said with her typical smile as if nothing happened. The group blinked, mentally questioning the sanity of the girl, and then Brandon took the lead. "Anyways, we are almost to the 3-point pass. All we have to do is go south from here, and it should be not too far away," he explained, looking at his map to make sure they didn't have another unexpected detour to take. "Sounds simple enough," Ash commented, happy to know they were almost at their destination. Go, noticing something, scratched the back of his head and said, "There's just one little problem though," as he turned and looked at the vastness of the sea in front of them. The others quickly realized the issue the Vermilion City researcher was trying to relay, but regardless, the young trainer mentioned it out loud. "How exactly are we gonna travel through the sea?" Peonia gritted her teeth as she realized Go's point. "You're right, we can't just fly over, our Pokémon will freeze to death from this cold," she finished whilst shivering, as she herself was starting to feel the effects of the cold, which seemed to get even worse when they got closer to the ocean. They definitely didn't call it the frigid sea for nothing. Mumbled everyone, as they tried thinking of a solution. Nothing. The group let out a simultaneous sigh, as 5 minutes had passed by and no one found a quick solution to their problem, which was quite a strange feeling, since usually at least one of them could come up with a plan, but not this time. Peonia let herself fall on her back, making her lay down on the grassy terrain. Ash, Chloe and Go swiftly joined her, just before she stated the obvious. "I'm stumped, you know, it would be great if some random Pokémon would just give us a ride to the 3-point pass." "It would. But considering the wild Pokémon here aren't necessarily the friendliest, I highly doubt that," Go countered. Brandon frowned and crossed his arms, frustrated he couldn't come up with anything. The Pyramid King then noticed a group of wild Pokémon swimming close to the shore, and pulled out his binoculars to investigate. Ash noticed this and stood back up, with Pikachu retaking his spot on the trainer's shoulder, and quickly made his way next to the Frontier Brain. "What's wrong, Brandon? See anything?" The Regi master put his binoculars down before shaking his head. "Nothing of interest, just a herd of Lapras passing by." "Oh, I see," he said, slightly disappointed. Ash turned around and started walking back to the rest of the group, but a sudden thought came to the Alolan champion's mind, making him freeze up on the spot. "Wait, herd of Lapras? Nah, surely it can't be." The Pallet Town trainer didn't even try and reason it could have been what he hoped for and resumed walking towards his friends. It had been such a long time, and in a place much further away from when he last saw it. The odds of it actually being what he thought were astronomical. "Strange, I didn't expect to see a herd of Lapras traveling through here," Brandon thought out loud, which made Ash freeze on the spot again almost instinctively, as the hyperclass trainer started to get more and more curious. A part of his brain was desperately trying to reason it could just might be who he thought it was. But come on. There was no way, right? He thought mentally, as he turned around to face the ocean and saw the multiple Pokémon continue their way further into the sea. Despite his logical thinking, Ash eventually grew too tempted not to check if it was actually who he thought it was. The trainer sighed at his bold assumption and said, "Hey Brandon, mind if I take a look?" The Pyramid King seemed a bit confused at the request, but nevertheless complied and handed over the binoculars. "Sure." Ash grabbed the object and raised it to his eyes, allowing him to see way further than he could with just the naked eye. He scanned the area for a bit, and he eventually found what he was looking for. The Alolan champion squinted his eyes at the leader of the group, who was silently directing the pact of Lapras behind him. The Pallet Town native still couldn't quite tell if it was the same Lapras he thought it was, as he was still too far away, so he slowly started approaching the shore. Whilst slowly making his way towards the ocean, the hyperclass trainer suddenly froze up once more when he heard a sudden faint cry from that same Lapras, which told him that it was exactly what he was hoping for. "Oh my Arceus, it is you." In all the excitement, Ash dropped Brandon's binoculars and ran even closer to the shore. The trio of trainers that were laying on the ground a good distance away from the scene raised an eyebrow each at Ash's sudden outburst. They stood back up and made their way to the Pyramid King, where Chloe asked, "What exactly is Ash doing?" A shrug from the experienced trainer was her only response. "Lapras. It's me, Ash," the Alolan champion screamed out into the ocean, trying to catch the attention of the leader of the Lapras herd. It seemed to be in vain though, as the group of ice types kept going on their merry way. He had now reached the beginning of the frigid sea and could no longer get any closer to the group of transport Pokémon. Ash needed to catch their attention before they were too far away, but thankfully, he knew just how. Pikachu. Thunderbolt into the sky. The electric type, who had yet deciphered what affiliation Ash had with that certain group of Lapras, nevertheless jumped off his trainer's shoulder and launched a bright bolt of electricity into the air. The water and ice types swimming in the ocean quickly noticed the bright yellow light shining on a nearby shore they had just passed, and slowly started making their way back where they came from to investigate. The leader of the Lapras herd originally had a serious look on its face, as he didn't recognize the source of the electric bolt, but soon enough, as they were getting closer, the frown on the transport Pokémon's face turned into exhilaration when it saw the familiar face of a trainer with a Pikachu on his shoulder, waving at its herd excitedly. Ash's previously owned Lapras let out a cry of joy as it swam faster to meet its former trainer, who started petting its head with a huge smile plastered on his face once the Pokémon arrived at the shore. "Lapras. It's so good to see you, it's been so long." The Pokémon nodded in agreement and Pikachu nuzzled the Pokémon's cheek, finally remembering the Lapras that Ash used to own. At that same moment, Ash's friends arrived at the reunion. "You know this Lapras, Ash?" Go asked, as he didn't remember him knowing one. "Of course, he used to be my Pokémon," the young trainer revealed. As Ash watched Chloe, Go and Brandon's eyes widened slightly in surprise. He was half expecting Peonia to say she recognized the Pokémon, but to his and the other's surprise, her comment was not at all what was expected. "You used to own a Lapras. That's so awesome," she exclaimed, earning a strange look from pretty much everyone. What?" she asked, noticing the weird facial expressions from her friends. "Why, you didn't know that?" Ash said, to which Peonia gave a shake of the head. "Now that is the most shocking thing I think I've ever heard in my entire life," Chloe expressed with absolutely no hint of sarcasm in her voice. Go and Brandon nodded approvingly, making Peonia deadpan. The rest of the Lapras traveling with Ash's old Pokémon caught up to their leader and seemed to ask if it knew the humans. After a quick explanation in Pokémon language, the transport Pokémons let out happy cries, happy that their leader got to reunite with its old trainer. Ash smiled at this and proceeded to ask a favor to his old friend. "So Lapras, we're trying to get to this place called the 3-Point Pass. Would you mind giving us a ride with your herd?" Ash's Lapras would obviously be glad to help out its former trainer, but it still asked the rest of its herd if they would mind. The water and ice types were happy to comply with the raven-haired boy's request and nodded to their leader. "Really, thanks a bunch." Ash turned to face his companions and excitedly declared. "Alright guys, we have our rides." "Great, let's get going then. I'll lead the way," Brandon announced, to which nobody opposed. The group quickly got on 5 separate Lapras and started making the final push towards the 3-Point Pass, greatly exciting the group of travelers. Brandon was at the front, riding with Pikachu next to him atop of Ash's Lapras. Since it was the leader of the herd, Peonia and Ash were side to side just behind him, riding on a Lapras each, and Go and Chloe just behind them, with their own Lapras each as well. "Well, Ash, you've somehow come up with another great plan to save us once again," Peonia commented with a smile, seemingly greatly enjoying her ride on top of her Lapras. "I didn't do anything, we're just lucky Lapras happened to come by here," the Alolan champion replied in his typical sheepish fashion. The blonde-haired girl looked at her companion in an unamused fashion and coldly said, "You just can't seem to take a compliment, can you?" Ash simply scratched the back of his head, embarrassed. Go, who was silently watching the two in front of him interact, chuckled at the truth in Peonia's words. He looked towards his right, and found Chloe looking at the pair as well, with an unreadable facial expression. Figuring it was about time he said something to his childhood friend about her strange behavior recently, Go tapped his Lapras gently and pointed towards Chloe, indicating he wanted to speak to her. The Pokémon wordlessly complied and got closer to its nearby member of the herd transporting the maroon-haired girl. "Hey Chloe," the young researcher first said casually, awaiting to see her initial reaction. Chloe seemed a bit startled by her friend, but recomposed herself before replying. "Oh, hey Go. What's up?" she replied in a strangely nonchalant manner, making her good friend narrow his eyes slightly. "That's what I wanted to ask you. You've been acting, well, strange lately." "What are you talking about? I'm perfectly fine." Seeing he wasn't going to get anywhere trying the subtle way, Go decided to get straight to the point. "You've been staring at Ash and Peonia like a creep for a while now, and also I've noticed that recently, the only person you look at or, heck, talk to as of late, is Ash." Chloe looked back at Ash and Peonia, seemingly just noticing she was in fact staring at the pair, and flusteredly replied, "Why, you're probably just imagining things, Go. Chloe, I've known you long enough to know when you're lying or not." The maroon-haired trainer visibly tried to come up with something to say, but found herself incapable of doing so. The girl sighed and looked at water beside her, her mind wandering as she spotted some Magikarps and Basculins swimming peacefully in the ocean. "Who am I kidding? Go's not stupid. He's obviously noticed I've been acting weird recently. But what am I supposed to say? I don't even know myself why I feel so strange around Ash." Chloe turned her attention back to her childhood friend and decided to be straightforward with him. If there was anyone who could help her figure out what she was feeling, it was probably him. "You're right. I guess I have been acting pretty strange lately, but the truth is, I don't really know myself. It's just that, recently, I feel so weird when I'm with Ash, but I have no idea why. It's as if every time I'm near him, I just can't think straight, and it seems like he's the only thing I can think about. And it doesn't help that today specifically, everything seems to revolve around him. It's so confusing, seriously." Go was a bit surprised, as he wasn't expecting her to just say what was bugging her in her mind, especially since Chloe is usually a quiet, reserved person. Nevertheless, he pondered her words for a while, trying to think of the best thing to say. You do bring up a good point when you say that so many things seem to be related to him lately, but as for what you're feeling," Go really wanted to say the first thing that immediately came to his mind when Chloe mentioned feeling strange around Ash, but he caught her stare on him and decided to drop it. "I can't really help you there." At the sight of her deflated face, Go thought back to what he and Brandon talked about when the group got separated in the Roaring Sea Caves. "You think she likes him, don't you? Well, I didn't say that, but..." "Look, I don't nearly know the girl as much as you must do, but from what I observed, she has slowly been getting more attached to him as time passed by, especially compared to the first day I met you all. Don't remind me, that whole day was a mess. I might not be too knowledgeable when it comes to feelings and emotions of others compared to other things, but what I can tell you is that there's a possibility she does feel something towards him, although she may not have realized it yet. But the way things have been going recently, she may very well know soon." Go didn't want to immediately jump the gun and tell Chloe straight to her face that she might have developed feelings for the trainer, but to tell the truth, he was almost certain that was indeed the case, she just hadn't realized it yet. Go turned his attention to Ash and Peonia in front of him, seemingly laughing at something, as he once again pondered what to tell Chloe. The Vermilion City researcher really wanted to help his childhood friend out, he truly did, but he knew this was something she had to realize herself. So he decided on simply giving her some words of wisdom. "Look Chloe, I would really like to help you out here, but this is something you're going to have to figure out yourself. But, there is one thing I can tell you." "And what is that?" The maroon-haired girl eagerly asked, desperate for some answers. Go chuckled at her despair before finally asking her, have you ever thought about, what is Ash to you? Huh? Hey Go. You gotta come see this, it's a white-striped bassoon, Ash suddenly screamed out of nowhere. Really? Those exist? The young researcher yelled back, as he quickly told his Lapras to catch up to Ash and Peonia. And with that, Chloe was left all alone to ponder what her childhood friend meant. She frowned and looked at the sky, thinking. I don't get it. What is Ash to me? What kind of vague question is that? A decent amount of time passed, an amount in which nothing really that intriguing happened. Go, Ash and Peonia had lost sight of the white-striped basculin before the Vermilion City researcher could catch it, greatly disappointing him. Brandon was still at the head of the group with Pikachu. The electric mouse still casually conversing with its old friend, and finally, Chloe was still at the back of the group, trying to figure out just what exactly Go meant by his words of wisdom. At first, it appeared to her as a very evident question. She was Ash's friend, but the more she thought about it, the more it felt weird to say. The girl shook her head, slightly worrying the Lapras she was riding on, as she tried to analyze the question deeper. They were definitely nothing less than friends, that's for sure, and whilst she unknowingly blushed at the thought of being more than friends, they were not that either. So why was saying Ash was simply a friend seem so bizarre to her? Did she not want to be titled as Ash's friend? Did she want to be something else to him? After another more aggressive shake of the head, the ride Pokémon carrying the maroon-haired girl let out a worried cry. Chloe quickly reassured Lapras after calming herself down. There were too many questions flowing in her mind that she wasn't thinking right. She figured she would be better off leaving the subject for now and addressing it at another time, as she saw in the distance the first few chunks of land consisting of the 3-point pass, and decided to focus on the adventure ahead. Little did Chloe know, a certain blonde-haired girl in front of her was watching her discreetly with great curiosity. Pikachu, the Pallet Town native, currently conversing with his research partner, perked up at the excited cry of his starter Pokémon. What's up Pikachu? He asked naively. I think he just spotted the 3-point pass, we can just about see it from here. Brandon suddenly explained, as he pointed to a nearby shore looking to be their destination. Really? Wow. This might be the first time we actually make it somewhere without anything trying to attack us. The raven-haired trainer joked, although the others didn't necessarily find it quite funny, proven by the unenthusiastic glares from Peonia and Go. Don't jinx it Ash, the only Galar domestic of the group warned. Ash simply laughed it off, clearly thinking nothing bad would actually happen. But as if perfectly on cue, a sudden gush of water erupted just in front of the group, making Ash's Lapras at the head abruptly stop. Chloe, noticing the huge splash, quickly caught up to the rest of her companions, just as a giant Magikarp mecha appeared from the ocean. It towered over the trainers and Pokémon as the fake Pokémon floated menacingly ahead of them, with its 4 mechanical arms flailing around in an unnatural fashion. At the sight of the strange mecha, Go turned to Ash frustratingly. You just had to say something, didn't you? Aw come on. How was I supposed to know that was going to show up? The Alolan champion quickly defended. And who knows, maybe it's friendly. Think again twerp, exclaimed a sudden voice, seemingly coming from atop the fake Magikarp. The group turned towards where the voice came from, and at the familiar sight of a purple-haired female with a Wobbuffet and a blue-haired man standing next to a Meowth, grunts of exhaustion were heard from Ash, Go and Chloe. Really, you guys again? Can't you just leave us alone? Chloe groaned out, holding her head as she couldn't bear to deal with Team Rocket again. Unfortunately, that's not how we work, maroon-haired twerpet, Meowth replied proudly. Oh my Arceus, is that the actual Team Rocket? No way. You're the one who's always chasing after Pikachu, right? Peonia asked, sounding strangely happy, causing Ash, Go and Chloe to look at her dumbfoundedly. Hi, my name's Peonia, nice to meet you, she waved with a grin. Peonia, you have got to be kidding me, the hyperclass trainer said in disbelief. Even Team Rocket seemed a bit weirded out at Peonia's strangely polite introduction, the trio asking simultaneously. Really? It is? Of course. It's truly amazing how you've never been able to capture Pikachu even after trying for so long, and you still keep trying, it's actually pretty impressive, the Galar native added, angering Team Rocket. Hey. We've captured Pikachu plenty of times, you. Blonde-haired twerpet? Jessie blurted out, trying to find the best way to call the new girl. Wasn't there already a blonde-haired twerpet? The one with the nice headwear? James thought out loud. Lily, Ash asked in slight confusion, as Pikachu jumped from Ash's Lapras to his trainer's shoulder. Yeah, that one. We can't have two blonde-haired twerpets now, can we? Meowth noted, holding its chin with its paws. True, you know twerp. You should really stop traveling with a bunch of blonde-haired twerps and twerpets, mix it up a bit for once. Ash was about to retort at Jessie's comment, but Peonia spoke up first. She's got a point actually, thinking about it. You've traveled with their blonde-haired people in Kalos alone. Then there's Lily, Bianca if you want to count her. On which side are you on Peonia? Ash screamed at his traveling companion, not bothering asking how she knew the names of the people he had traveled with. The talking Meowth smirked. Hey, I kinda like this new twerpet. She's definitely better than the maroon-haired twerpet over there. Chloe blushed before screaming out. What? Whilst the rest of the group and Team Rocket started bickering, Brandon silently went over to Go to ask him for clarifications. Who exactly are these people? He asked, confused, as he didn't quite understand what was going on. Ash's Lapras seemed to have an idea though, since it had a similar reaction to Ash, Go and Chloe at the sight of the evil team members. They are bad people who try to steal other people's Pokémon, but for whatever reason, they always try to capture Ash's Pikachu specifically. They were actually the ones who caused the trains to be delayed the day before we left for the Crown Tundra. The Vermilion City researcher explained, earning a silent "oh" from the Pyramid King. Ash, having heard enough from the trio, decided to get back on track. Anyways, what do you want, Team Rocket? I'm not giving you Pikachu, so why don't you just leave us alone already? Jessie grinned, before cheekily saying, how about, no, Meowth, do the thing. You got it. The talking normal-type Pokémon pulled out an obscure device and pressed a button on it, causing the Magikarp mech that they were standing on to open its mouth and shoot out a giant net, aiming straight at Ash and Pikachu. Barely having the time to react, the Pallet Town native quickly called out a move. Quick! Iron Tail. Pikachu proceeded to jump off its trainer's shoulder as its tail glowed a glimmering silver, and attempted to slice the net that was heading for him. The electric mouse swung its tail with a flip, but to the group's surprise, the net firmed the hit, stretching with extreme elasticity, causing Pikachu to ultimately get caught and get reeled back in front of Team Rocket. Pika! The Pokémon screeched in shock. Pikachu! Come on twerp, don't you think we know you better than that? The talking cat once again teased, seriously starting to tick off Ash. We knew you were going to try and cut the net, so we made it out of extremely durable rubber. Pretty smart, Why you? Wow, that's actually really clever. Nice one, Team Rocket. At Peonia's words, just about everyone in the group looked at the girl as if she was crazy, specifically Ash, who gave her a glare that could probably kill, but the blonde-haired girl subtly returned a sly wink. The Pallet Town trainer clearly didn't get the message she was trying to relay, but Brandon took note of this and stayed alert. Well, thank you. It's great to see our work appreciated for once, James thanked, as he was pleasantly surprised by the praise from Peonia. But of course, such a wonderful piece of technology must be appreciated, the young girl added in an unnaturally formal tone. Hey guys, I kinda like how this twerpet thinks, Jessie commented out loud, before suggesting something to her. Hey twerpet with the pink highlights, how would you like to join the winning team and have a spot on Team Rocket? Really, it would truly be an honor to join the likes of geniuses like you, Peonia replied once again in an unnatural fashion before slowly telling her Lapras, the Pokémon equally questioning her line of thinking, to get close to the trio. The blonde-haired girl then swiftly jumped off her Lapras and onto the Magikarp mecha. At this point, Ash was convinced she was hit on the head and slumped on the back of his ride Pokémon in disbelief. Chloe and Go suddenly came up next to him, tapped him on the shoulder, and pointed towards Brandon. The Alolan champion, confused, turned to the Pyramid King and noticed he had discreetly released his Ninjask, who seemingly was trying to approach the net that was keeping Pikachu, where he finally understood what Peonia was doing. He was about to let out a loud, "Oh," but Go quickly covered his mouth and shushed him before he made too much noise. Now hold up just a minute, twerpet, we would need to evaluate you first, make sure you're worthy of being part of people like us, Meowth announced, before pulling out a pen and paper out of seemingly nowhere, looking to be ready to interview her. What do you think you could bring to the likes of Team Rocket? Peonia started off, whilst holding her chin. Well, first of all, I'm a pretty small eater, so you guys wouldn't have to share too much food. That's a good trait. It's already hard enough to eat when Morpico's around, James noted, earning nods from his companions. What else? I can cook some pretty good curry. I do well in cold places. Oh, and I am a pretty good battler too. I've studied Ash's battle style for years now, so I know all the amazing tricks he's used before. We know the twerp more than anyone else, so we already know all of his tricks, Meowth said with a frown, not convinced. Trust me. I know a trick that I'm sure you've never seen him use before, Peonia declared with a smirk. Go on then, Twerpet, prove it, Jessie challenged the younger girl. Peonia chuckled, before saying smugly, of course. Have you guys ever heard of Pikachu, Thunderbolt? Wait, Thunderbolt? Team Rocket shouted in panic as they saw from just behind Peonia the electric mouse they thought they had captured suddenly jump into the air and fire off the move they were more than familiar with, the bolt of electricity flying straight towards the trio. Just before they were about to get blasted off again, Wobbuffet made itself useful and used a mirror code to reflect the move into the sky. Team Rocket realized they had just been tricked when they saw Peonia swiftly jump back onto her Lapras still with a smirk, joined at her side by Ash and his now freed Pikachu, Brandon and his Ninjask on her other side, and Chloe and Go behind her, with all of them looking ready to battle. Hey! What was that all about? Blonde-haired Twerpet with the pink highlights? Meowth screamed in anger, before abruptly lowering his tone. We really need to find a shorter name for you. Sorry, I'm not looking for a job right now. I got some ruins to go check out first. Why you? Fine, we don't need your help anyways. The magenta-haired Team Rocket member declared, before simultaneously declaring with her male companion. Gotcha, come on down. A sudden Pelipper cry was heard from the skies, the group of travelers looking up to find the water-flying type drop a strange-looking vending machine perfectly in front of Team Rocket, who forcibly used Meowth's charm to twist the crank, the normal type shivering from the strange sensation. 2 Pokeballs came out of the vending machine, which Jessie and James immediately released. They revealed the brutal Pokemon Sharpedo and the Icebreak Pokemon Walrein, both of them landing in the water ahead of the Magikarp mecha. Wow, we actually got some pretty good Pokemon for once, Jessie squealed, happy to know they weren't given some useless Pokemon to battle. Not like that's going to change anything, Pikachu, Thunderbolt again, Ash shouted back, as Pikachu jumped from his shoulder once more and fired off his favorite move. Shadow Ball Ninjask. Brandon shouted as well, his Bug-type Pokemon firing off a decently sized purple sphere of ghost power. PFT. How cute. Show Emma Dark Pulse Sharpedo, Water Pulse Walrein. At Jessie and James's commands, the 2 Pokemon belonging to Team Rocket launched their moves, colliding with Pikachu and Ninjask's moves, creating a big puff of smoke. Brandon wasn't planning on giving them any time to relax, and immediately ordered his Ninjask to get in closer with Aerial Ace on Sharpedo. As the ninja Pokemon buzzed closer to the dark water type, Jessie told Sharpedo to use an agility, easily evading Ninjask's moves due to its already fast speed, and struck back with an Ice Fang, dealing massive damage to the frail Pokemon. Wow, that's fast, Chloe muttered, noticing how quickly Sharpedo moved around in the water. Jessie laughed sadistically at her comment before speaking up cockily. Alright. Fun's over, Aqua Jet, Crunch Walrein, James added to his team member's command. As the 2 Team Rocket Pokemon rushed towards the group, Ash's Lapras let out a loud cry, seemingly trying to tell something to its herd. Before Ash could even ask what his former Pokemon was doing, all of the Laprases opened their mouths and let out high-pitched screeches, causing the multicolored rings of round to shoot out of their mouths. This greatly disrupted Sharpedo and Walrein, since the sound of the multiple Lapras was too loud for the Pokemon to handle, which gave Ash and Co. the perfect opportunity to strike. Awesome Lapras. Alright, this time for real, Pikachu, Thunderbolt. Merge it with your Shadow Ball Ninjask. At Ash and Brandon's respective orders, the 2 Pokemon combined their attacks, which sent a strange beam of electric and ghost power straight at Sharpedo and Walrein. The 2 Pokemon, still dazed, didn't have time to react, and got hit with the improvised move, causing them to crash into Team Rocket's Magikarp submarine, which in turn, made it explode, and sent Team Rocket flying once. Aw, come on. The one time that stupid machine gives us good Pokemon. Of course the twerps are joined by a herd of Lapras. The magenta-haired woman complained whilst soaring through the air. It seems like we just can't win, can we? James commented with a sigh. Well, we did have Pikachu for a while there, but the twerpet with the pink highlights pulled a fast one on us, Meowth added. True, but for now, Team Rocket's blasting off again, the trio shouted simultaneously as they flew further into the sky, disappearing in a bright white star. At the sight of another Team Rocket blast off, Go let out a loud sigh. I wonder if they will ever actually stop annoying us. Lucky Peonia thought to distract them. I thought you had lost your head, Ash admitted, thankful his companion managed to exploit Team Rocket's gullibility. Did you really think I would stoop so low as to compliment Team Rocket? Oh please, have a little faith in me, Ash, she joked, sticking out her tongue and winking playfully. As the group laughed out loud, Peonia once again spotted out of the corner of her eye Chloe being strangely quiet, staring at both her and Ash, and she giggled quietly to herself. Something was definitely up with her, and she eagerly wanted to find out. With Team Rocket's minor interruption done and dealt with, the group of travelers were able to safely make it to the shores of the 3-Point Pass with no more problems. Ash and Pikachu were the first ones to disembark from their ride Pokemon, where the trainer readjusted his hat and exclaimed, "Finally, we made it. Only a little bit more and we'll be at the temple," Go added in a similar tone, equally excited to finally get to check out the ruins. Brandon, Peonia and Chloe joined them on the shore, and then the entire group turned around to face the nice herd of Lapras that helped them reach their location. Ash took a step forward, getting closer to his former Pokemon, and looked at it with a mix of thankful and sad eyes. He knew he couldn't possibly ask Lapras to travel by his side again, it was the leader of its herd after all, but he still felt a bit sad they would already be leaving each other after just reuniting. Ash smiled and petted Lapras on its head, earning an adorable cry from the water and ice type. Thanks for all the help, Lapras. It was really nice seeing you again, he confessed. The Pokemon smiled back at its trainer at his words, before Ash continued. Well, I guess this is goodbye. It's a shame you can't come with us, but I'm sure we'll see each other again. You'll always be a part of the family after all. Lapras let out one last soft cry before turning to its herd, silently telling them they should take their leave. The group of ride Pokemon nodded before turning back towards the ocean, and swiftly making their way towards their next destination. As the adventurers waved goodbye, Ash added for the last time, "Hey Lapras. Be sure to visit us in Vermilion City, we'll be waiting." Pikachu. The electric mouse screamed from Ash's shoulder, agreeing with his trainer's words. Lapras turned to them one last time with a smile, before it inevitably disappeared into the now sunset with the rest of its herd. The group stayed there a while, taking in the moment, before Brandon got the group back on track. All right, the ruins shouldn't be far from here. If we make good time, we should get there before nightfall, so let's get moving. Right, shouted back to the group of young trainers. As the group silently started making their way forwards, Chloe, who had been keeping relatively to herself recently, was still thinking about what Go told her just before they encountered Team Rocket. No matter how much she tried ignoring it, she couldn't get the question he asked her out of her mind. She looked up to find the three males of the group conversing about what could possibly be hiding in the mysterious temple, but kept her focus on the one that had been plaguing her mind for the past 2 days. Chloe facepalmed lightly before muttering, "This whole thing is gonna make me lose my mind." "What thing?" Chloe screamed in surprise, before quickly calming herself down when she realized it was just Peonia sneaking up on her cheerfully and innocently. "Oh, it's just you." Peonia giggled before risking the same question in a different manner. "So, what's bothering you, Chloe? You've been acting pretty weird ever since you all got out of the cave earlier." The maroon-haired girl's sweat dropped, mentally asking herself how everybody seemed to notice she wasn't acting like her usual self, before quickly dismissing anything. She really didn't feel like telling Peonia. "It's nothing, just thinking, that's all." Unfortunately for Chloe, the Galar native wasn't going to give up that easily. Peonia quickly walked in front of her, and whilst walking backwards, she added in a teasing voice, "Come on Chloe, I know there is something bothering you. Maybe I can help." "No, seriously, it's okay." Chloe really didn't feel like having Peonia get involved with her own issues, but the girl just didn't want to let it go. "Chloe, please just tell me. I won't tell anyone, plus you won't feel any better if you just keep it to yourself, so just spit out. The young Vermilion City girl was about to tell her to stop pestering her about it already, but she stopped herself right before. She pondered it for a bit and, as much as she hated the idea, maybe Peonia was right to a certain extent. She wouldn't really get anywhere if she just kept it to herself, and maybe having the advice of another girl could actually lead her to some answers. The only probably was that she didn't particularly like the idea of telling Peonia specifically. They weren't really that close, and, not like she hated the girl or anything, but she would definitely rather tell somebody else. But then again, who else would she ask? She wasn't particularly very close to anyone at her school, especially now that she started traveling a lot more with Ash and Go, and she didn't want to wait until the group got back for some answers anyways. She obviously couldn't tell Ash. Go already knew and said he couldn't help any further, and, respectfully, she doubted Brandon would be much help in this type of situation, which then only left Peonia as a possible candidate. Chloe sighed before taking a chance. Peonia clearly wasn't going to leave her alone about it anyways, so she decided to tell her, even if she might go on to regret it later. Fine. Can I ask you a question then? She took her excited nods of approval as her sign to go on, but struggled to get the words out of her mouth. It surprisingly wasn't a very easy question to ask. She ended up deciding to ask her the exact same question Go asked her earlier, because maybe it could help her better understand the question, and after a bit of difficulty, she finally said, "This might sound a bit weird, but, what exactly is Ash to you?" Chloe didn't like the surprised expression on Peonia's face, as the latter clearly wasn't expecting that, and she felt a strange sense of nervousness while awaiting her response. The blonde-haired girl's facial expression changed to a questioning one, before suddenly changing to a smile, as she replied, "Well, for as long as I can remember, he's always been somewhat of an idol to me, someone I strive to be like. Especially now, since I've got to travel with him for a bit, I learned to look up to him even more, and I also feel I can safely say he's a good friend now too." Chloe unintentionally exhaled, feeling a weird sense of relief from Peonia's answer, and Peonia questioned her about the origin of the question. "Pretty strange question to ask though. I don't really get how this affects you." The maroon-haired girl frowned before explaining further. "The thing is, ever since the past 2 days, I've been feeling kinda strange around Ash, and I have no idea why. I asked Go for some advice earlier, and he seemed hesitant to respond. The only thing he told me was to think about the question I just asked you." Peonia slowly started to grin at her words. So that's what was bugging her. The blonde-haired girl had her suspicions, but after what she just told her, it was pretty clear what was going on. Thankfully, Peonia had a plan. "Well, what is Ash to you then?" Peonia asked bluntly. I don't know, what do you want him to be to you then?" "I seriously have no idea, Peonia." The Galar native pouted. She wasn't getting anywhere at this rate, so she decided to be as blunt as possible, and just say what Go was probably too afraid to ask. "Say, Chloe, do you like Ash?" What? And no, of course, and not," was the answer Chloe gave, and the answer Peonia was expecting. The blonde-haired girl laughed. She was going to enjoy this. "You stuttered." "Wah, and no I didn't, and you're blushing." What on earth are you talking about?" "And no I'm not." "You just stuttered again." Well, it's because you're asking stupid questions." "So you don't like him?" "And no, so you wouldn't mind if I had feelings for him and told him right now?" "Wait, what?" Peonia simply gave her a devilish smirk, and prepared to call out for the Alolan champion's name. "Hey, Ash." The Pallet Town trainer in question turned around at the sound of his name, only to find Chloe desperately trying to cover Peonia's mouth. He raised an eyebrow, alongside Go and Brandon, who were also equally confused. Yeah. What's up?" Chloe let out a forced laugh before replying. It's nothing, Ash. We just wanted to know if we were close to the ruins." "Okay. Well, yeah, we should be there right after passing through these giant stone pillars," he replied whilst looking at Go, wondering if the two girls were okay. The young researcher simply shrugged. "See, cool, thanks." The Vermilion City girl, all whilst still covering Peonia's mouth pretty forcibly. "Yeah, no problem, Chloe," Ash said awkwardly, not really understanding what was going on between those two, but didn't question it further, and went back to conversing with Go and Brandon. Chloe let out an audible sigh, before finally letting go of Peonia, and noticed she still had the same smirk as before. The blonde-haired girl gave another giggle and said, "Why'd you stop me, Chloe?" The girl in question was left stunned, as she couldn't quite find an adequate reason for her own actions. Well, because. Peonia laughed again, to which Chloe frowned, before saying, "I think we just answered your question, Chloe. Don't worry, I won't steal him from you. Well, unless you really don't like him after all." Peonia. The Galar native gave her a wink, before quickly catching up to Go, Ash and Brandon, joining in on their conversation, as the first few pieces of the ruins could be seen. Chloe stayed back for a while, as she was too stunned to move. Her head struggled to comprehend it, but thinking about it, have I actually, fallen for Ash? "Hey Chloe!" suddenly exclaimed a more than familiar voice. Chloe looked up, only to realize it was in fact none other than Ash, excitedly smiling at her and pointing in front of him. "Hurry up! The ruins are just up ahead." The girl, with a couple tinges of pink forming on her cheeks, flusteredly replied, "Oh okay," before joining the rest of the group. This was turning into quite the adventure, that's for sure, to be continued. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please let me know your thoughts and reviews in the comment box. Now I will see you in the next video.